Hello everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Charnwood Borough Council Planning Committee on Thursday the 27th of August 2026. Please could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are given your consent to be filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside of the Council's control. May I remind members of the public to be considerate of the committee and officers throughout the meeting and to remain quiet unless you are a registered speaker as part of the allocated public speaking slots. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Corey Loseley. Who's the Vice Chair? Got Councillor Campsell, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Granger, Councillor Haji Nicolai, got Councillor Infield, Councillor Matthews, got Councillor O'Neill, Councillor and we've got Councillor Smidovitz. The planning officers present this evening are Miss Liggins, Miss Wallace and Mr Akram, and our lead officer for the evening is Mr Upton. Our Democratic Services Officer is Miss Dobson. I would also like to welcome Mr Gill, who's our legal advisor for the evening. For those watching the live stream, the planning officer presentation has been published on the website and can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for 27th of August, or on the Council's YouTube channel. Could I please ask members of the committee to use their microphones every time they speak to ensure that viewers of the live stream and recording can hear the discussion. Please remember to switch off microphones once you've finished speaking. We received a few late requests to speak this evening. Firstly, Miss Zoe Felton, who's an objector, and Mr Nigel Trassler, the Haddon Way Residents Association, for item 5B, P/26/0867/252, 52, Hillcrest Drive, Loughborough. And we've got Miss Heather Howard, who's an objector for item 5C, P/26/0938/2, Bosworth Wright Anstey Limited on Hollow Road in Anstey. Are the committee happy to allow the request to speak? All those four? That's unanimous, is it? Yeah, okay, all right, so all of those are okay, that's all passed. Item 1, apologies. Miss Dobson, have we received any apologies?
We've received apologies from Councillor Northridge and Councillor Matthews will be substitute.
Lovely, thank you. And like I said, Councillor Seaton is on her way. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Is the committee happy to confirm with the correct record the minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of July 2026? All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you very much. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed to the correct record. I will sign them at the end of the meeting. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms Dobson, have we received any questions?
I confirm no questions have been received.
Lovely, thank you. Item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. For information, disclosable pecuniary interests and registrable interests relate to entries that are included or should be included when a council has registers of interests. Non-registrable interests relate to any other matters. Ms Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interest?
I confirm I've not received any disclosures in advance of the meeting.
Lovely, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest from the floor? No? Okay, wonderful. So that brings us on to item 5, which is planning applications. And our first application of the evening is 5A, P/26/0314/2, the Manor House at 70 Main Street in Cossington. I would like to refer to the planning officer, Miss Liggins.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Members will recall that this application was deferred at the July Plans Committee to enable the consideration of late representations and further information on the relevant issues to the consideration of the proposal. So additional updates are also provided in the extras report. The application was originally referred to Plans Committee at the request of Councillor Woodward under the Council's call-in procedure for the reasons set out in paragraph 1.1 of the July agenda report, which is appended to the current agenda. Councillor Woodward had concerns about overlooking, loss of privacy, effect on trees and wildlife, drainage and flood risk, noise. The impact of the proposal on the local community would be excessive. The village has limited infrastructure to support the development, and all journeys would need to be by the private car, which is contrary to the council's policy on sustainable development. And also, the application was widely opposed by residents and the parish council. So this is an aerial photograph of the application site, which comprises the rear garden of the manor house. Its swimming pool, garden, play equipment, including a tree swing and trampoline, woodland. The application site also includes a grassed paddock to the west of the watercourse. Part of this paddock and the land within the red area of the application is proposed to become a mixture of residential use associated with the manor house and is proposed to be used for camping. So the applicant proposes a total of 25 pitches, each with a maximum occupancy of 6 persons. The applicant states that camper vans and caravans are not permitted. The use would subsist for 90 days per year between the 1st of April and the 30th of September in any year. The applicant further proposes to limit the pool hours between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on any day, and no amplified music would be permitted anywhere on the site. So this slide shows the This slide shows the extent of the red line area, with around half of the site being within the Cossington Conservation Area, which is shown in green. The hatched pink buildings are statutory listed buildings. The manor house itself is a locally listed building. The black line that you can see is the Cossington limits to development as identified in the Charnwood local plan. So the whole of the application site is within land designated as countryside. So the top 3 photos show the camping field, probably more green and lush than it is today. The bottom left shows the rudimentary poles to a typical toilet structure. So these would be enclosed with woven willow screen fencing and would contain composting toilets. The bottom right photo shows the existing double-gated vehicular access off Platts Lane, to which no alterations are proposed to be made. This slide shows the layout of the site. The irregular shaped green area to the centre is the proposed camping field. The reddish brown lines indicate existing paths which are intended to be out of bounds to campers, with the aim of keeping guest routes as far away as possible from neighbouring garden boundaries. The dark blue colour is flood zone 3. The lighter blue colour is the extent of flood zone 2, and the pinky colour is the extent of flood zones taking account of climate change. So these are the key considerations in the determination of the application before you tonight. The site is located in the countryside where there are strict controls to protect the largely undeveloped character and appearance of the rural landscape. Policy C1 of the local plan does allow for some development in the countryside, and this is set out in paragraph 9.12 of the July report. The proposal does not seem to fit with those development types. However, the proposal does gain support from policy E41C of the new NPPF, which accepts facilities for rural leisure and tourism, and also policy E3 of the Charnwood local plan, which also supports rural businesses. Therefore, in principle, the development is acceptable. Members will note that the applicant makes the case for permitted development rights to be considered as a fallback position, and this should be acknowledged. Part 4, Schedule 2 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted England Order 2015, as amended, deals with temporary buildings and uses of land, and Class BC of Part 4 specifically deals with temporary recreational campsites and permits this for 60 days in any calendar year, including not more than 50 pitches and any reasonably necessary movable structures for the purpose of the campsite. So there are 6 stated instances in the legislation where development of this nature could not be permitted, but these are irrelevant to the proposal before members tonight. So the applicant has therefore sought to take up those rights, and the legislation requires they must first inform the council in writing before the commencement of the development in each calendar year, providing a copy of the site plan, indicating the site facilities and the dates the land would be used for camping. So this has been done on an annual basis if the intended camping land falls within flood zone 2 and 3. So members should be aware of this fallback position. So in terms of the residential amenity, members will see in section 9.3 of the July report how the amenity impacts to neighbours was considered, and that noise, use of the pool, hours of guest arrivals and departures, etc., could be managed to minimise disturbance to existing residents, and planning conditions were sought to be imposed to require the applicant to strictly adhere to the management plan, footpaths plan, etc. However, since then, the lived experience of neighbours has shown these measures have been ineffective at reducing disturbance to acceptable levels. This has also been exacerbated by the late night use of a footpath cut through at the side of the manor house and passing alongside another property, giving quicker pedestrian link to Main Street to access village facilities such as the pub, but this causing disturbance to neighbours. The use of the pool and its position is very close to the neighbouring gardens, and that also remains a concern, with continual complaints being received to the department. In terms of highway access, this is set out in section 9.6 of the July report, and there are no objections from the local highway authority relating to the use of the existing Platts Lane access to serve the development. So, in conclusion, it is considered that there are benefits to the scheme, and the applicant has altruistic motives for offering the site to campers interested in exploring nature and local attractions. However, the impact to neighbours has been proven difficult to manage, and excessive disturbance has typically arisen in the daytime, at weekends, and in the late evenings, when neighbours should reasonably expect to enjoy their own gardens and the tranquility of the countryside. It's therefore recommended that planning permission is refused for the amenity impact reasons set out in the update report before members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms Liggins. So that brings us on to speakers for this item. The first speaker I have down here to speak is an Amanda Eames, or Ames? Ames, sorry. So if you'd just like to take a seat here, it's the right-hand side button, I believe, to turn the microphone on. Once you're ready, Miss Dobson will start the timer. When you have 1 minute remaining, she'll let you know. Whenever you're ready.
Chair, members, when you deferred this application in July, you gave yourselves the opportunity to see what this campsite actually meant for the people who live beside it. Unfortunately, over the weeks since then, we've had to live with the noise, activity and loss of privacy again. Last year gave us a taste of what happened when the campsite activity extended into the garden and the pool, and we raised our concerns then because, quite honestly, we couldn't bear the thought of this happening every summer, year after year. We bought our homes here because it's a very peaceful place to live. For around 15 years, we've lived alongside this property with no issue with the residential use being normal around the garden and the swimming pool. Relatively small numbers of holidaying families have completely changed what it's like to live next door to just one family using this garden in a normal way. The reason is that they're using a swimming pool, gathering in a domestic garden and spending hours playing alongside our homes. This is exactly what happens when a private residential garden becomes part of a recreational offer for successive groups of paying campsite guests. We also have fires and fire pits associated with the campsite, which has been another concern for residents, which before we never had to worry about. Some of the neighbours are retired and work from home, or they are there throughout the day, and there have been times where windows have had to be closed, even in really hot weather, and people have had to stay inside due to the noise. And daytime noise matters when your home is where you spend your day. And this has affected people's well-being. It's certainly affected mine. And we haven't just asked you to take our word for this. We've kept logs, we've sent recordings, we've got photographs. Environmental Health have independently monitored the noise and found significant daytime amenity impacts to nearby gardens. The applicant has stated that management changes have improved things, but we are the people living next door to the campsite, and from where we are, those changes have made no real difference in the impact to us. Your officers now say the current controls remain insufficient and that conditions could not be sufficiently framed or enforced to reduce harm to acceptable levels. And 5 weeks ago, members, you were being asked to consider what might happen, but you don't have to imagine it anymore. We've lived beside it, Environmental Health have monitored it, and your officers have now reconsidered this. So I'd ask you one question. Would you consider this acceptable if it was right next to your homes and gardens? We simply want to just enjoy our homes as we did before this commercial use began. Please support your officer's recommendation and refuse the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker we have up is Miss Meg Collin, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant. So as before, Miss Collin, just the button on the right to turn the microphone on when you're ready. Miss Dobson will set the timer, and when you have 1 minute remaining, she'll let you know.
Good afternoon. My name is Meg, speaking on behalf of the applicant, who is away this week looking after his grandchildren. I'm an architect, I work for my local authority, and I was previously the landscape specialist for Somerset Council. I've advised on several campsite applications like these, and I know what a difficult job it is sitting on committee and acting as case officer. I'm also the applicant's daughter. I didn't drive all the way up from Bath with my 6-month-old to remind you of the alignment to local and national planning policies. That's all been done for you by the case officer. I came to share about why the campsite exists and the positive impact that I've seen it have on visitors and locals. The applicant is a weekly volunteer with the local branch of the Wildlife Trust, and earlier this year, the Trust reported how nearly half of 18 to 24-year-olds spend little time outside each week, in spite of 80% of adult respondents recalling positive childhood memories of nature and play. There's strong evidence linking time in nature with improved mental health and well-being, yet many simply do not have access to the outdoors. In the heavily populated Soar Valley, there are very few places for families to camp together in a peaceful green space. And Cozy Wild's ethos of close to home, close to nature meets this gap. The site is particularly good for walkers and attractive to DOV expeditions, which help gain an interest in outdoors among teenagers. The applicant has taken extensive measures to extend wildlife conservation by creating and maintaining a variety of habitat and enjoying an abundance of native species as a result. In the 29 years since my parents moved into Cossington, they've been an integral part of village life, hosting occasional fundraising events, open gardens, and the annual Bellringers barbecue. They've shared what they have with others, and this campsite is an extension of that. It gives campers from a range of socioeconomic backgrounds the chance to enjoy and learn from nature in a safe environment. It brings visitors to the pub and the garden centre, provides a summer job for two local students, and encourages respectful enjoyment of the local nature reserve. In planning terms, I cannot think of a better example of sustainable development than this light-touch seasonal campsite with its composting toilet and car-free incentives. The fallback is that it continues under the 60-day rule without the proposed noise, pitch, and time restrictions. But my parents are deeply committed to village unity and community, and with that desire the full regularisation of the site. And if you're not convinced, I invite you to come down, experience it for yourself. See children tasting mulberries for the first time, long-lost friends meeting halfway, it's not called the Midlands for nothing, families bonding around the campsite. You can hear the sound of laughter in the mid-afternoon. Come and enjoy the site for yourself, and it might remind you of some of the most wonderful parts of your childhood. It certainly does for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker we have is Miss Lorraine Goldsmith on behalf of Cossington Parish Council. So when you're ready, Miss Goldsmith, you have 3 minutes. Miss Dobson will let you know when 1 minute is remaining in your own time.
Thank you.
Sorry, you might just need to push the microphone on again. There we go.
Thank you.
So I'm speaking today on behalf of the Parish Council and the wider Cossington community to ask you to refuse this application as per the recommendation. Cossington is a small, peaceful village with a close-knit community. The land in question sits right on the edge of our homes, and until recently, it was a quiet paddock and garden. What is now proposed is a commercial campsite hosting up to 150 visitors for much of the summer. That level of activity would fundamentally change the experience of living in this part of the village. Over the past 2 years, residents have experienced firsthand what even a small number of guests can mean in practice. Noise from the swimming pool, garden and play equipment has directly carried into neighbouring homes, shouting, splashing, raised voices well into the evening. These are not occasional disturbances. They have been regular, intrusive, and have continued despite the applicant's stated curfews. Privacy has been a major concern. Guests have used pathways through the garden that run extremely close to neighbours' windows and sitting out areas. People have reported strangers walking just feet from their home, and late-night return journeys from the pub have brought noise right up to the residential boundaries. Signs and informal rules have not prevented this, and residents have repeatedly witnessed visitors using out-of-bounds areas. The council asked the applicant to provide a professional noise assessment to show how these impacts could be controlled. None has been submitted. The management plans that were provided have not worked in practice, and the harms already experienced are far beyond what anyone could reasonably expect to live with next to their home. Even the offer to shorten the pool hours does not address the core issue. The pool and the garden are simply too close to neighbouring properties to be used as shared facilities for a commercial campsite. This is not about resisting change for the sake of it. It's about protecting the everyday peace, privacy and well-being of the people who live here. The evidence from this summer clearly shows that these impacts cannot be managed or mitigated to an acceptable level. Your own officer's report concludes that the development would be intrusive, over-dominant and harmful to the conditions of the neighbouring residents. As the Parish Council, we agree. We have listened to our community, we have seen the impacts for ourselves, and we are asking you to support your planning officer. On behalf of the council and the village, I ask you to respectfully refuse this application and protect the character, tranquility and quality of life that make Cossington the community that it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, our last speaker on this item is the ward councillor, Councillor Woodward. When you're ready, Councillor Woodward, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee and officers. I supported the decision to defer this application in July because members needed the opportunity to consider the outstanding evidence and actual impact of this development. More than 5 weeks later, we're in a clearer position. The site has continued to operate, residents have continued to provide up-to-date evidence, environmental health have undertaken their monitoring, and your planning officers have recommended refusal. There are 3 points I would like to ask members to consider. So first is the Class BC fallback. So the applicant refers in his latest representation to the ability to repeat the 60-day permitted development process each year. Members should not assume that this represents simply a 60-day version of the development before you today. The Council has previously confirmed the Class BC notification relates to the land within the notified area. It does not provide permitted development rights for campsite use of the applicant's domestic garden and swimming pool. That distinction is fundamental because the application before you seeks something considerably wider. Commercial recreation use of the domestic garden, including the swimming pool, play equipment, pathways, immediately joined to the established homes in Cossington. These are precisely the areas in which the significant amenity impacts have been identified. Second, the proposed management measures have now been tested in practice. The applicant states changes such as the family pool sessions finishing at 6 have improved the impacts on neighbours. However, Environmental Health monitored the site during the managed operation and concluded that the recordings characterised significant daytime amenity impacts to nearby garden uses. The officer report similarly concludes the management plan and private paths plan have proved to be insufficient and that conditions would not effectively overcome the identified harm. And finally, members should consider where we are now procedurally. The outstanding technical issues were known before the July committee, and by today, more than 5 weeks have passed. The full noise impact assessment requested by Environmental Health still has not been submitted. The applicant now confirms that an adept compliant flood evacuation plan has not been provided either. Members deferred this application to enable outstanding matters to be properly considered. The evidence subsequently obtained has not removed concerns, it's actually strengthened them. So there's no longer a theoretical assessment of what this development might mean for neighbouring residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Before we move on to the discussion amongst members, Ms Liggins, did you have anything from the speakers that you'd like to follow up on? Thank you. Councillor Seaton. I'm afraid it precludes you from voting on it, certainly, yes. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the discussion. Are there any councillors that would like to speak? Yeah, Councillor Matthews.
That's it, yeah. I can't get used to this new thing. So we've heard arguments from both sides on this. I think one thing that stands out to me hugely is that one side of the argument has been backed up with quite a lot of facts, environmental health report and so forth. The other side of the argument, for me, was just a nice little story about how nice it is. Now, I'm not doubting it's a nice place. I think it's great sort of thing, I'd do. But commercial next door to residential, it's never a good idea, in my view. It's always going to be a problem. And I think for me, I've not heard enough about what the applicant wants to do about these problems that are arising. And that just sits a little bit heavy with me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matthews. Ms Liggins, is there anything you want to come back on there?
Just one thing. We met the applicant quite early on in the application process, and he devised the management plan that was put forward to try and set out how these things would be controlled and mitigated to kind of limit the harm. So that's why we had the footpaths plan submitted that shows those brown pathways out of bounds to try and draw, to try and discourage campers from using those paths. However, the presence of a private path, no entry sign attached to a tree hasn't prevented their use. So it's difficult to know how we could control that from a planning conditions point of view without a physical barrier to those paths being put in place.
Yeah, the point I was just kind of making, thanks very much for that. The point I was just making was literally just on what I've heard tonight from the speakers is the point I was trying to make. That was more what I was leaning towards rather than what you were talking about there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matthews. Is there any other councillors that wish to speak? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, listening to the applicant sounds great. Back to nature, get the kids out and that, and but it's in the wrong place, isn't it? That's the thing. Residents have got a right to peace and quiet when they get home, you know. So really, I recommend we go be officers and refuse it.
Was that a motion, Councillor Campbell? Yeah. Do we have a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Fryer. Yeah, second that. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the speakers. As my colleagues have said, it sounds an excellent idea, but in the wrong place. I think we have, I was here when it was deferred. I think we've given every opportunity for the information that we asked for to be provided. I think it's a different situation if it's family and friends using it, but when you've got 50 camping places, sites, and however hard you try, it's going to be noisy, particularly with the use of a swimming pool. If it was just on the site, which we didn't see today, but we saw last time, way back from the houses, but the swimming pool is virtually because it was a domestic house for a domestic family, the swimming pool is right up among all the residents. And however hard you try, you're not going to keep it quiet. And I think this summer, which may be the first of many, that we like to sit with our open windows to get some air and enjoy our gardens, to have that next door. So I am happy to second and to go along with officer's recommendation in this case.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fryer. Is there anyone else who wishes to come in? No? Okay, well, with that, we have a motion on the table, proposed by Councillor Campson, seconded by Councillor Fryer, to accept officers' recommendations, which is for refusal for this application. All of those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
It's 12 for.
That's 12. That's unanimous. Okay, so that motion has passed and the application is refused. Thank you very much, everyone. This brings us to our second item, which is item 5B. Just going to swap officers over, so bear with us one moment. So this is item 5B, which is P/26/0867/2, which is 52 Hillcrest Drive in Loughborough. I would like to refer to the planning officer for this application, which is Miss Wallace. Miss Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the change of use of a detached two-storey dwelling to a children's care home for up to 2 children. Thank you. The dwelling is located off a private driveway to the south of Hillcrest Drive, to the south of Loughborough. It's within a residential area within the limits to development. So the dwelling itself has a driveway for the parking of cars and a detached double garage to the north of the site here on the screen, if you see my cursor. And it proposes to change the dwelling without any external alterations or extensions to the dwelling house itself. The dwelling is proposed to provide care for 2 children at the property with 24 hours a day care. The application states that there will be 2 members of staff on a 12-hour shift basis and a registered manager during the daytime. Parking would be to the north on the driveway, and a block plan has been submitted to demonstrate that there are 3 parking spaces on the driveway and a double garage included. They have stated that they will remove the gateway and fencing to the frontage of the property here to allow easier access to the parking. Since publication of the report, comments have been received from Councillor Worrell, who has requested that the information in the report on buses and walking distances be corrected. With regards to the walking distance to Manor Road, it's 800 metres, approximately a 12-minute walk, and Hazel Road, 1,100 metres, approximately a 70-minute walk. It's also noted that there's a bus stop on Allendale Road, which is a 5-minute walk, served by the bus number 5. However, that service operates only between 7:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. Monday to Saturday. The number 12 is the nearest one for evenings and on Sundays. The size of the garage has also been raised, stating that it's only 4.8 metres wide, and the County Council require a double garage to be 6 metres wide, so it can only be counted as 1 space. A further letter of representation has been received since publication of the report, objecting on the grounds of the suitability of the site in terms of parking, traffic, noise and disturbance to the day-to-day lives of residents. This will be a 24-hour managed operation with staff handover, visitors and professionals, which is substantially different pattern of activity from an ordinary family home. Parking is a major concern and how the home will operate along with increased vehicle movements. There's noise concerns about a 24-hour day at children's home with shift changes, care, etc. Reference is drawn to a refusal in another local authority and that these issues were considered sufficient for warrant a refusal. The objection is in relation to the intensity and operational nature of the proposed use and whether it's compatible with this particular residential setting. In response to the comments received, the corrections to the bus times and distances are noted. The garage measures approximately 5.9 metres by 5.3 when scaled off the submitted plans. So regards to parking, even if the size of the garage was below standard, there would still be at least 4 parking spaces within the dwelling, which would be sufficient to serve the proposed development. The application site is within a sustainable location within walking distance of facilities, services and transport links, and the level of parking is considered to be acceptable. The objection is noted, but however it raises no new issues that haven't already been addressed within the officer's report. Turning to the principle of development, in terms of principle, the site is within the limits to development of Loughborough and a sustainable location. It would provide residential accommodation which would contribute towards meeting a need within the community. The proposal is supported in principle in line with the local plan and the requirements of the new NPPF, which gives the proposal substantial weight. In terms of highway safety, whilst it's located off a private driveway, the parking and double garage to the site would provide sufficient parking to serve the level of the proposed development. There are no proposed changes to the dwelling. So regards to residential amenity, the main concerns being regards to noise and disturbance. The care home will be for 2 children with carers on a shift rota basis, which would be similar to a conventional family home. The staff and managers would be responsible for adopting practices to minimise noise and disturbance, and it would be regulated by Ofsted. It's not anticipated that there would be a significant increase in comings and goings to the property when compared to a conventional family home. Conditions are proposed to restrict the number of children to 2 as applied for, and to restrict the use class to a children's residential care home only, so it wouldn't have a general C2 use. There's no change to the design of the dwelling or the appearance. So in conclusion, the change of use is in a sustainable location and is acceptable in principle. It's not considered the proposal would have any significant adverse impact on highway safety or residential amenity to warrant a refusal. It's recommended for approval as set out in the report and extras report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Wallace, that's great. So that brings us to our speakers for this item. The first speaker we have up is Ms Zoe Felton, who's an objector. So Ms Felton, when you're ready, Ms Dobson will set the timer. You have 3 minutes, and when 1 minute is remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know. If you just press the button on the right in your own time.
Okay, I live on the same cul-de-sac as the property, and I'm here representing the neighbours as a whole. We would like to note that it differs from normal residential use significantly, in our opinion, on the point that it's been mentioned but appears to be missed in the planning officer's report, and that is the handover of the care team. Twice a day, handover will happen, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, including bank holidays and weekends, and it will have an impact on the parking plan. Although there's 4 spaces, cars 1 and 2 cannot get out once cars 3 and 4 are there. So how is that going to actually happen in principle? The access to 3 of those houses is directly opposite their driveway. So the only way we can see it happening is that there'll be a shunt of cars, which will be disturbing, especially in summer holidays and at weekends and bank holidays. And it will also potentially prevent us being able to get out of our driveways if we want to get out to work at the same time as this is happening. Due to the limited information we have available, it is impossible to say whether it will or won't be akin to normal residential use. We have nothing to say who will run the home. Do they have experience in running children's care homes? Will the placements be short or long term? What will the needs of the children be? Will they be in formal education or homeschooled? Will it result in large gatherings of youths on the cul-de-sac? By the very nature of being in care, they will be vulnerable and may have complex emotional and behavioural needs. Whilst all this could exist in a normal residential home, it is not the normal residential experience. Whilst we have no objection to a well-run home with a maximum of 2 children in theory, we have concerns about the practicalities of it. And then there's the question of, is there actually a need for it? To give you some background on the property, the owner stopped using the property as his residence in August 2019. Since then, the property has been raided by the police on 2 separate occasions, both times privately let by the owner, as far as we're aware, and both times have been used as a cannabis farm. In between these incidents, it was on long-term let through an agency, and for the last couple of years, the property has been run as an Airbnb with RL Accommodations acting as the agent. They initially were short-term lets, more recently they've been long-term lets. All the long-term actual residential lets have been absolutely fine with us. We are also concerned about the lack of oversight by the owner on previous occasions. There has been no permanence to the use of this property over the last 6 years, and we are concerned as to whether this is another fad. It appears to be exploiting this loophole in the system, which appears to be a new trend, replacing student accommodation, which has previously flooded the town. These experiences are why many of our objections are rooted. We ask that you reject it, but should it be accepted, we wholeheartedly support the conditions the planning officer has recommended, but we would like to go further. So was that time up? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. That brings us to our next speaker, which is Mr. Nigel Trasler, who is the chair of the Haddon Way Residents Association. Looks like the microphone's already on, so whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Ms. Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
My name is Nigel Trasler. I am the chair of HWRA Residents Association, and I'm also a close neighbour to number 52 Hillcrest Drive. Whilst we are not in opposition to children being cared for in the community, we believe that this location is wholly inappropriate. The Planning Office report states several times that the conversion of this house to a care home is in kin with the activities of a standard domestic house. We strongly disagree with this statement for the reasons my neighbour has raised and for the following reasons. Councillor Worrall will explain in some detail our concerns over the suggested parking arrangements by the applicant. Movement of cars early in the morning, late at night, every day of the week, including weekends and bank holidays, in fact, 24/7. The social impact is also a great concern. If a new family moved into this property, they would become part of and contribute to the community. As neighbours, we would welcome them. They would use local amenities, the art community centre, local church, etc. Proposal to use this property as a business will create an isolated house in the middle of a closely knit community. We refer to the officer's reference to the updated NPPF policy H07. There is clearly a need for family homes in the very close proximity, as evidenced in the large quantity of new houses in the local plan in the areas HA 15, 16 and 17. But the applicant does not provide any evidence from the local authorities' Children's Social Care Department that there is a need for a children's home in the area. Also in the Planning Officer's report, item 8.5, she refers to the Charnwood Local Plan, policy DS4, which requires developments to make a positive impact on the surrounding neighbourhood and to enhance the local community. We believe this change of use does none of these things. We therefore ask that the committee refuse this application. If the committee see fit to approve the application, then it is important that the residents are given assurances that any negative impact will be mitigated. Earlier, we heard commercial next to domestic, never a good idea. We request the following conditions to be added to the application. 1, that the approved specifically states that the house is to be used for a maximum of 2 children at any one time. 2, we would like to go further than the Planning Officer's proposal and prohibit any further application under the C2 policy. 3, that any car parking is strictly restricted to the red line of the property only, no parking on any part of the block paved driveway or on the already very busy highway. And 4, a detailed plan of how the mass movement of cars at handovers will not cause any disturbance to the local neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trasler. And our next speaker is the Ward Councillor, Councillor Worrall. Councillor Worrall, I assume you know the drill. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that I fully support children being cared for in the right environment in the community. However, this is not the right location for the following reasons. This property is centrally located on a small private drive off Hillcrest Drive. When facing the front of the property, there are 2 properties bordering it on the right side, 2 at the rear and 1 on the left side. Their back gardens all border the back of number 52 and will be particularly sensitive to noise from number 52. There are also two properties on the opposite side of the drive and another small driveway off the private drive, leading to garaging and parking for number 42, 44, 46 and 48. This small driveway is directly opposite the parking area on the right of number 52. The application states that all vehicles to children's home, if approved, will be accommodated in the spaces provided without inconvenience to neighbours. The double garage is 4.8 metres wide. Leicestershire County Council states that a double garage requires 6 metre width to accommodate 2 modern cars and allow for doors opening. I conclude that only 1 car parking space can be allocated here. This means only 4 cars can be accommodated instead of 5 as recommended by the Highways Authority. These will be parked in tandem with the one furthest away from the private drive in a garage. Every car on the drive will need to be moved to move the garaged car. I note there will be shift change at 8 a.m. and at 9 p.m. involving 4 staff. After the handover, cars will need to be moved to enable staff to leave. This shunting backwards and forwards at a crucial time in the morning will make the private drive inaccessible for other residents going to work. Where will social workers, visitors and staff attending case reviews park? Where will delivery vans park and how many more car manoeuvres will be required for these? The noise and disturbance from an increased number of cars accessing the property, especially during quiet times, and the cumulative effect from all the manoeuvres needed will have a huge effect on the residents, the amenity and character of this small and quiet cul-de-sac, as these are vastly different to normal family movements. For the reasons I've given above, this property is not suitable to become a children's home, as logistically and practically, due to its central location on this narrow drive, it cannot accommodate the level of activity associated with a commercially operated 24-hour care facility. In my opinion, it does not comply with policy DS4 or T3, and the neighbouring residents will be adversely impacted from the proposed change of use. I respectfully request that this planning application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Worrell. So again, before we move on to the discussion, is there anything you'd like to come back on?
Yes, please. Just a few things. I think Councillor Worrell's just actually affirmed it, but the times of the shift changes are within the report. So the shift times would be from 8 a.m. and then 9 p.m. for the changeover shifts. There's 2 shifts in a 24-hour period. With regards to controlling of sort of noise and disturbance and activities within the home, that's done by the maintenance and management plan, and that would be Ofsted regulated. They have their procedures in place which would manage if there's problems or anything to do with disturbance. Plus, obviously, if it gets to a statutory nuisance, that's where environmental health would be able to come involved, and we would be able to regulate that through those statutes. I think Mr. Trousers talked about recommended conditions. Condition 4 in the report restricts it to a maximum of 2 children. We can't condition that they can't any further planning applications on the property. That's not something we can do. Restricting the parking, I think the only thing we can do is make sure they provide the parking, so there is sufficient parking within the property. And then finally, a comment from Councillor about the deliveries and visitors. This would be the same situation for deliveries and visitors to the residential property that currently exists. This property would still be in residential use, just as a residential children's care home. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Ms Wallace. So with that, are there any members that wish to speak? Councillor Infield.
Thank you. So I've listened carefully to the objectors, and although they say they support childcare in the community, I understand why any development like this on any domestic street is going to be a change and will probably be resisted. I think in trying to object to it, much has been made of the park shuffling. This might take 30 seconds or so. I don't think this is really going to block the street or impede people making their way to work. So, having seen the property today and seen the parking spaces and seen the nature of the house, only to accommodate 2 children, I mean, it's a 4-bedroom house. If there was a family moving in, it could be 4 or 5 children. They make a lot more noise than 2 children in care, as far as I can tell. So I have to say that I support the officer's recommendation for this, and I think I can see no really tangible planning reasons why we could turn this down. And therefore, I think we should support the officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Infield. Is there anything you'd like to come back on that from Ms Wallace? No? Happy? Councillor Campbell then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very angry, actually. I'm here for the kids, these poor kids, right? But I'm 100% for the objectives, because we've had several of these children's homes in Thorpe Apidishley, and I can tell you now, it's coming and going all day, all night, destructing people, right? So that's spot on. But the officers mentioned a family home. No, it's not a family home. Some of these kids are being dragged from Liverpool, London, put in hundreds of miles away from their homes. You know, if this government's got all this money to slosh around, it should be putting it into foster homes and giving it to parents so the kids can be looked after at home, because they don't want to be there in a care home, you know. And that's what I want to say, because I'm really angry about this.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Is there anything you want to come back on, Ms Wallace? No? I've got Councillor Smidovitz next, and then Councillor Matthews after that. Councillor Smidovitz. And Councillor Good as well. Councillor Smidovitz.
I think that's on now. I don't know if you can hear me. I've got a throat problem. I used to chair family court for over 20 years. So children come in all shapes and sizes with different needs. But I do have concerns about this change of use. And unfortunately, Charnwood Borough Council does not recognise the 3C to a 3-2 as being a C2, I should say, being a material consideration. Some boroughs do. The number of these applications that are coming in nationally are about 150 a month. Where trained carers are going to be bought from and trained in this level of time, I just do not know. But unfortunately, I can't find any material matters that we can even raise. I would only recommend that we consider certain conditions, and I would like to see just the children from Leicestershire being housed in these properties, because we can be taking children from a wide distance away. We don't know what sort of families they've come from and their needs, and we're paying a considerable amount of money. I agree with various comments that were on the internet. They are the new HMOs.
Thank you, Councillor Smidovitz. Ms Wallace, did you want to come back on that? No? Okay.
Good.
Right.
Sorry, Chair. I'd just like to pick up the point. We have carefully considered the change of use clearly in the report from a C3 to a C2 use. But just to respond to the point about trying to restrict that even further by conditions, we've set out reasonable conditions limiting the number of children. But I think it would be unreasonable, and we wouldn't, and that's why we haven't recommended a condition to restrict the occupants any further than number. As Ms Wallace meant, or Mrs Wallace, sorry, get my colleagues right, set out there are other regimes in place through Ofsted to look at how properties are managed, and there's also be an environmental health angle to that as well, should anything untoward happen. So yeah, I just wanted to make you aware that it wouldn't be reasonable to condition the occupants of the property as well as the numbers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to respond to that, Councillor Smidovitz? No? Okay. Okay. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you. I didn't catch it. I didn't know if it was mentioned, or I may have missed it in the text if it was there at all. Is there a specific age range of children that they're going to be taking, or is it from newborns to 18-year-olds? I've had a quick flick through. I couldn't find anything.
Is that information that we have?
The age is, I think, just what if it's under 5s, I don't think.
Thank you. I don't have that information to hand, although with it being children, it would be under 18 years old.
Okay, I think one of the points I wanted to make with that is, if let's say there's 2 16-year-olds in there, one of the things that 16-year-olds are going to have is a lot of visitors, a lot of comings and goings, which I think would be maybe a little bit disruptive to residents on such a small street. But without that information, it's hard to sort of go on. Also, as well, I want to talk about the car parking situation as well. Now, looking at this, all the cars will be parked in a straight line. So if the car that went in first wants to come out first, musical cars is going to have to be played, quite frankly. And I can relate to how annoying that is, because 3 of my next door neighbours have a very similar car parking arrangement. And what tends to happen is that because they know that they're going to be leaving at different intervals, if they don't, instead of playing musical cars, they will park their cars in various places along the street. It happens because they just don't want to do that, despite having a very long driveway. Now, can we have it in some way, an amendment in some way, that staff of the care home must park their cars on the driveway as part of the application? They can't start parking in front of, on the street. They must use the parking spaces that are provided. And also as well, if all those parking spaces are full, where do tradesmen come in? I mean, there's going to be things that are going to need fixing in this house. There's going to be things that are going to need to be done. Where are they going to go? It's looking at just looking at Google Maps now. It's absolutely tiny, this street. It's literally tiny. I mean, you're going to be parking up on people's front lawns almost. And I can't see anyone being very happy about that. So, yeah, can we have a look at that?
Miss Wallace?
Thank you. The age of the children is not a material consideration of the planning application. We're considering the change of use to a children's care home. With regards to if there's a high number of visitors or there's some disturbance through that, again, I refer back to the fact that we managed by the management plan and regulated by Ofsted if there's any concerns. With regards to parking, the tandem parking is the same as it would be if it were a 4-bedroom residential property. So if you had a family living there with a number of cars, they'd have the same scenario with having to move cars to get a vehicle out. So that is the same as if families live there with children with cars and parking. When we visited the site today, the width of it at the frontage is probably wide enough to fit 2 vehicles side by side. We saw that when we visited this afternoon. We can't condition they must park on the drive, just similarly we couldn't condition a new house that the parking had to be on the driveway. We can condition they have to provide the parking and the parking remains available, but it's not reasonable to condition they have to park because we can't enforce against that. With regards to tradesmen's delivery, obviously it is a private driveway. There are no parking restrictions on the driveway or the Hillcrest Drive. So cars could park on there. There's no traffic restrictions. So if they were parked with regard to the law, they could park on those highways. There's no restrictions on the wider highway network.
Councillor Matthews, do you want to come back on that? Yeah. No? Well, I appreciate that adding a condition is probably not a defensible thing to do. And while I appreciate this is less robust, is there a way that we could ask the applicant if they could include in the management plan that staff are expected to park on the driveway and not on the road? I understand there's no statutory weight behind that, but it is a request we could make of the applicant. They could always say no.
Again, I think that would be as part of a management plan that we wouldn't control under planning. So if Ofsted and their management plan talked about that, I don't think, personally, not knowing the detail of that parking arrangement and whether it would go into a management plan, I thought it would be more about how the care and the facility is managed. But I think it's definitely unreasonable under the planning regime, and I wouldn't want to cut across anything that Ofsted might be responsible for.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Matthews.
Has any arrangements been thought about for, if they're older children, if it's going to be older children, about about visitors and things like, is it going to be a set of visiting hours, for example? I mean, what residents are not going to want is hordes of 16, 17-year-olds turning up to play loud music at 2 o'clock in the morning with their mates. Can there be some kind of, I'm not saying curfew, that's ridiculous, but some kind of visiting hours of some kind?
Mr. Gill.
The simple answer is no, because it would be unreasonable, because any condition that you put on has to be relevant to the planning matters that are under consideration, and unrelated matters such as commercial controls are of no concern. If I was to buy that house tomorrow and I had 6 children and I was to move in, then I wouldn't expect any conditions to be put on my use of that property. And the officer has said quite clearly, there is no difference. In fact, in my experience, there is less of a problem with these properties because you do actually have people that are in charge and that are responsible and that have a management plan and that are answerable to Ofsted. And there are occasions when you have neighbours, I'm sure we've all had them, that move in and have no regard for anybody in anything and just let their children run wild. So, yeah, I appreciate that, but the problem is you could only apply a condition if there is a material planning consideration which needs to be addressed. And in my view, it's not relevant to planning. It wouldn't be enforceable. How do you make it precise? And more importantly, is it reasonable in all other respects? And that's the point I make. If I was to buy that house and move in and had 6 children, not that I have, but if I had, you're going to have the same issues with cars. You've mentioned that yourself in terms of your neighbours with cars moving about. You can have the same issues with children, the teenage children. But the point is, you do have the management plan. You do have Ofsted as the fallback, who the neighbours can go to and request that they ensure that the home is being run in a proper way.
I have a friend who lived in one of these type houses, a older teenager, and they got a management plan, very much regulated. She's from Leicestershire and her family's from Leicestershire as well. So it enabled her to stay home near the family, even though her family couldn't care for her, and she maintains a relationship with them because of being in one of the homes. Also, she's a very much, from being in the home, she's very much a positive person in the community, volunteering, and has actually managed to move on into a MenCap home and live herself through being at this home. So when there's been comments about people who are going to cause loud music not being a contribution to the local society, it's given her a fresh hope and able to live within her family and to live on her own despite different learning difficulties. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I have Councillor Seaton next.
And thank you, David. I think you said everything that I wanted to say. Sometimes I think we're a little bit confused what the planning of the planning committee can do and can't do. This is entirely the right place for two children in care to be brought up in a family situation. I can't believe that we've spent all this time talking about parking when I've just gone onto Google Maps and seen the residents parking on the road, not in their driveways, on the road, pushed right into the hedging. I don't want to labour on that because there are no grounds, planning grounds, to refuse this application at all. I would like to explore a condition if I could possibly, and it's got nothing to do with what the house is being used for, but the front garden. I would not like to see that altered in any way. The fence, the hedging taken up, because I think somewhere in the talk I was listening, it did say something about removing something to make it easier to park. I'm sure I heard that, but I've gone on Google Maps and looked at it, and the frontage is quite attractive. It matches the other residential houses there, and I would hate that to be ripped up just to accommodate cars at the front of the house. That would completely alter the look of the whole close there. And that is all I wanted to say on the matter, except we need to understand what we can and can't do in planning law. And I've got 3 children, and they've not been angels, and my grandchildren aren't angels either. And they've all lived there for one reason or another, marriage breaks-ups, arguments, hissy fits and all sorts of things. And my neighbours have rocked and rolled and gone with the blows, and we still talk to each other. This is going to be highly managed, probably, well, more than likely, a lot better than I managed my house. So this is going to be regulated and managed. And it also means that if there is a problem, you've got somewhere to go. If my neighbours had a problem, they had to come to me. And to be honest, I wouldn't advise that at all, because I'd have stuck up for my children. So these have got an avenue to go at, the management company, if it's not being managed properly. So really, I would like to go with Officer's recommendation, but I would like to look into the possibility of having a condition that would keep the house frontage the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Officers, do we feel that would be a reasonable and defensible condition to add?
So I'll take back to the gates and fences slightly to the side of the property, which currently blocks the space 2 and 3 behind us. They're saying they're going to remove that to allow that easier access parking. And in doing so, they want to just put some fencing between the house and the garage just to block off the garden area. But that wouldn't require planning permission if the fence was below 2 metres in height. So that's not considered as part of the change of use. So this is an application for the change of use only. The frontage garden isn't proposed to be changed as part of the parking or the plan. And also there's no restrictions on if it was a house, them changing the frontage. So it wouldn't be reasonable or necessary for us to condition that, I'm afraid.
Well, I know on some new housing estates you are restricted about what you can do to the look, and it might be on the covenants there as well. So it was just the conflict. I heard you saying something, and then I've read that it's not going to be altered. So thank you very much for that. And as I say, I would like us to go with Officer's recommendation to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I had Councillor Campbell next, and then I'll come to you, Councillor. Have you? Sorry. Go on then. Councillor Fryer, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Roy, for letting me come in. I would second Councillor Seaton's proposal. I've been on the site. I was a bit distressed to hear various speakers almost presume that the children that are in this care home or come to this care home are going to be difficult, noisy, out of control, and want loads of visitors. We should never presume that. I can't presume. I have an empty house next to me, a big house. I can't presume that it's going to be a single person of a certain age with a small dog going to live there. That's none of my business. And Councillor Seaton has pointed out that this is quite highly managed, and they are. I know that from dealing with children and families at county in a previous time. What I think we have to get away is some of these children, yes, I hold my hands up, they can be a handful. My children were handfuls at times. I've now got grown-up grandchildren that I wouldn't necessarily think are perfect. But I also know of a family, and they're grown up now. Both parents were killed in a road accident not 20 miles from here, one night. 2 children left. What are we supposed to presume with them? Their whole life is turned upside down. No aunts and uncles, a very, very elderly grandparents, and they had to go into a home. That wasn't any of their fault. They weren't misbehaving. So I have great pleasure. This is highly detailed. Ofsted are looking at it. There are places people can go and complain. I shall go home tonight and I will be parking my car a road and a half away, because I know the people around me in an old street or even a new street, each house of this size has at least 2, if not 3 cars. So I second Councillor Seaton's proposal. And I would like to note that all children are not the same. And please don't presume that if you happen to come across a children's home, that immediately they're tarred with a brush. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Campbell, please.
I've been looking into this now for over a year. 90% of these kids are traumatised, very traumatised. Most of them just want to run away. They'll smash a room up, run away. So that means you've got police coming round, fire engines, ambulance scraps. On a small little road like this, no, I think it's in the wrong place. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Did any of the councillors wish to speak before we go to the vote?
One more comment. I said children come in all shapes and sizes, and I mean that. But in my ward, we've had one that had to close because of behaviour. And I recommend that anybody at the start keeps a diary of any odd incidents that you can refer to. You may find you don't have any incidents at all, but you've got the evidence, should you need it, at a later date.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smidowitz. So with that, unless anybody else wishes to speak, we'll go to the vote. We have a motion on the table from Councillor Seaton, seconded by Councillor Fryer, to accept officers' recommendations, which is for approval. All of those in favour? Any against? And any
So 12 for the motion, 1 against, Chair, so the motion is passed.
Thank you very much, Mr Gill. So that one is passed. And that brings us to our next item, which is item 5C. Are we changing telling officers? No? No? Okay, you again. Fab. We'll go straight into it then. Item 5C, which is planning application number P/26/0938/2, which is the Bosworth Wright Anstey Limited, Hollow Road, Anstey, Leicestershire, LE7 7FS. So I once again we'll just give it a moment for the room to settle. Do we want a 5-minute?
Downstairs. Yeah, just downstairs.
Yeah, we'll just be 1 minute then. 1 minute. It may as well be, Councillor Good. Yeah. It was nice to have a little break in the middle. So we will, without further ado, move on to our next application, which is our Anstey application, 5C, P/26/0938/2, Bosworth Wright Anstey Limited, Hollow Road, Anstey. I would like to once again refer to our planning officer, Mrs. Wallace. Mrs. Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the change of use of premises for storage and distribution, which is B8 use. No alterations are proposed to the actual building. As part of the application, it is proposed to extend the existing drop curb to the southwest of the site to a length of 9.5 metres. To facilitate this widening of the access, the lamp post is proposed to be relocated to the centre of the site. So the site itself lies to the east of Hollow Road, within the limits to development of Anstey, and with the premises set back from the highway with hard standing to the frontage for parking and turning. The site currently has 2 accesses onto Hollow Road. The premises historically operated as a bespoke cardboard and packaging manufacturers. The site, as I said, is within the limits and is in a mixed-use area with a park to sort of the north and east, employment use to the south, and residential to the west on the opposite side of Hollow Road, and some to the south. So this is the existing building. I say no changes are proposed to the building. The bottom right-hand photograph shows the access and the lamppost that are proposed to be altered. And that shows the 2 accesses at 9.5 metres wide. So in principle, as stated, the site is within the limits of development for Anstey in a sustainable location. The premises are an existing employment site and would be used for storage and distribution and would remain in employment use. This is supported by policy, and the requirement of the new NPPF states substantial weight should be given to commercial development. In terms of highway safety, there's been significant concerns raised with regards to the B8 use and HGV movements to and from the site, and obstruction this has caused onto Hollow Road. The application actually includes improvements to the access arrangements to the southwest, and information has been submitted which demonstrates the suitability of the visibility displays and that HGVs can access and egress the site in a forward gear. These improvements will assist with HGV manoeuvring in and out of the site. Advice has been sought from the Highways Authority, who have analysed the trip generation of the existing and proposed use, and the use is not expected to result in a material increase in trips generated when compared to the permitted use of the site. The proposal with the alterations to the access would provide safe and suitable access to the site and would not materially affect the safety of the local highway network. Hollow Road is a predominantly residential in character. However, there are some employment industrial uses within the area. The current use of the site is uncontrolled and can occur at any time. That is in reference to the existing building and the previous cardboard and packaging factory and the current unauthorised use. So the hours of operation and delivery can be controlled via condition, and that's been recommended by Environmental Health, which should protect residential immunity during sensitive times. Environmental Health have raised no objection subject to that condition as set out in the report. There's no change to the design or alterations of the building, and all the matters in respect of flooding, ecology, drainage and biodiversity are considered to be acceptable. In conclusion, the change of use is in a sustainable location, is acceptable in principle, and it would not have any significant adverse impact on highway safety or residential amenity to warrant a refusal. So it's recommended for approval as set out in the report and extras report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wallace. So that brings us on to our speakers for this item. The first speaking slot we have is for 2 speakers. So I've got Mr. Dave Berry and Ms. Heather Howitt, who will be sharing the time. Have you organised between yourselves how you'd like to do it, or would you like Ms. Dobson to give you 90 seconds each? Yeah, okay, no problem. In which case then, after the first speaker has spoken for 90 seconds, Ms. Dobson will let you know. The time will then go straight on to the final 90 seconds. So whoever's first, whenever you're ready, just press the right-hand side button on the microphone there. Yeah, perfect.
I've lived in Hollow Road for 28 years. I've worked in local government. I presented reports to people like yourselves. And what I tried to achieve in those reports I presented to members was that you made an informed decision. From my point of view, the report from the officers is not an accurate description of what actually happens. It is not a realistic picture. The factory was built in 1934. My house was built in 1904. Those roads were not designed for 18-wheeler Arctic lorries. Currently, we are getting around about 5 vehicles a day entering and leaving that site. When it was a manufacturing site, we had 2 cars, employed local people. The current users have 3 cars, don't employ local people. We are seeing, I don't know whether any of you know Anstey, but can you imagine driving into Anstey, driving round the Nook, going up Staden Road, round Double Bend, which has got a bus stop, parked cars. You go around a 90-degree bend, cars parked on the right-hand side as well. You're going up a hill. You come to a junction with Hollow Road. You turn left. You're on a blind hill. You cannot see down the hill. You cannot see where you're going. If you drive down Hollow Road during the day, you will see cars parked on both sides of the roads. To say that it is a safe decision to turn it from what was a manufacturing place to a distribution depot is risking people's lives. We have a video of a young lad cycling back from school, actually ending up in the hedge because the lorry driver's pulling out, and your picture on there does not you cannot see leaving out of that site because of a fence one side, a container on the right-hand side, and trees. So it's not a safe entry and exit point.
We want to be clear that residents are not opposed for this site being used for business, and we accept its smaller commercial history. But the issue is whether this specific use in this specific location can operate safely and without disrupting local residents. And we believe it cannot. This is a retrospective application. Residents are already living with the impact. We are seeing large commercial vehicles manoeuvring blindly, waiting for long periods of time outside the premises and mounting pavements, restricting the use for pedestrians. We are significantly concerned about the safety and the residents of local people, and over 60 residents have independently objected. They've described the exact same safety and noise issues that we wanted to try and explain today. We want to make sure you're genuinely satisfied that this distribution use can continue here without creating an unacceptable impact on highway safety and the lives of local residents. If there's any reasonable doubt, the only responsible decision is to refuse it. Refusing an unsuitable use isn't anti-business. It's recognising that businesses need suitable premises, that residents need safe roads. Thank you.
Very much, both. So our next speaker is Councillor Baines, who is the ward councillor. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready, Councillor Baines.
Evening, committee members. This application is not simply about retaining an employment use. It's actually about whether a storage and distribution operation is appropriate in this location and whether the impacts on residents have been fully and properly assessed. I contend they haven't, and I'm suggesting you go against the officer's recommendation because I think the officer's recommendation is based on inaccurate information. The officer report places weight on the site's previous industrial use, but a distribution centre is fundamentally different from a packaging business, which is what it was. The nature of the activity changes from making products on site to a logistics operation reliant on the regular movement of goods vehicles. Residents have provided consistent evidence, as you've just heard, but also in the online, the increased vehicle activity, congestion, noise and disruption. And these are not speculative, these are actual observations over recent months. I'm concerned that the application relies heavily on theoretical trip generation modelling and comparisons with what the previous lawful use might have generated. And the reality, I think, is very different from what local residents are experiencing. Hollow Road is a residential road, cars on both sides often enough. It's a bus route. It's a route used mainly by pedestrians, families and children accessing the recreation ground and play area. Members will note that many objections refer to difficulties caused when larger vehicles manoeuvre in the area, delays to buses and concerns about safety. The application requires a substantial widening of the access and creation of a dedicated loading and unloading area to make it work, and that in itself demonstrates the demands that this use places on the site. I'm concerned that the report concludes there will be no unacceptable impact on residential amenity because conditions can control delivery times, but residents have already reported activity outside acceptable hours. Granting permission would just regularise what they're already doing and doing badly. Planning decisions must be based not only on whether a use can technically fit onto a site, but whether it is right use in the right location. In this case, we have a distribution operation located alongside homes, adjacent to a recreation area used by children, on a bus route and access through residential streets. We have substantial local concern, evidence of existing disturbance and unresolved questions about the true level of vehicle activity. For these reasons, I do not believe this application has demonstrated it can operate without unacceptable harm to highway safety and residential amenity. I therefore respectfully ask members to reject the officer recommendation and refuse planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baines. So before we move on to the members' discussion, is there anything you'd like to respond to, Ms Wallace?
Thank you. Just a couple of points to raise. So, as I stated, the building was historically used as a packaging and cardboard factory, but the use of the building has a general Class E use, which could be a number of different uses, including commercial, business and services. So it could be used for retail, hot food, takeaway, services, sports facilities, children's nurseries. So it doesn't have, it's not restricted just to what the building was historically used for. Somebody could come and operate a Class E business from that property without requiring planning permission. So it's just worth bearing that in mind when the highways assess what the use could be used for, as opposed to what the application is proposing the use for. The comments on vehicle movements and HGV movements have been carefully considered, and the Highways Authority have advised us with the proposed changes to the access, which haven't happened yet, that would allow the safety and the movement of the vehicles to be able to move in a forward gear. I think there's been some concern with reversing vehicles out of the site. The operating hours, there are no restrictions or conditions on that building at the moment. The building was built before planning legislation came in for any restrictions to be on it. So in regularising the use of the site would allow us to put those restrictive conditions on the hours of operation and hours of delivery, and that condition we consider to be enforceable. So if they do start operating outside those hours, we can take enforcement procedures forward. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Wallace. So we're now on discussion. Any members that would like to speak? Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. Can I, it's not got unrestricted use at the moment. So have they, because they've got to have planning permission for the alterations to the front and the lamppost, etc., is that why they're, is that why this has been brought up now?
The building was used for cardboard and manufacturing, which is Class E now. It would have been a form of Class B2, but it's now Class E. They've been operating a B8 use without the benefit of planning permission. So enforcement action procedures take place, which has led to the application coming in to regularise the B8 use within the building. But at the same time, they're proposing the changes to the access and the lamppost.
We are councillors, and obviously what happens in our local area has an impact on what we've got now. And I've got a fulfilment centre that has gone under the radar for a long time. So now it's got above the radar. It's too late because it's been going on for a long while in the same use. So I can understand them on Hollow Road, and it's not just the HGVs there, it's getting there as well and using the small roads to get to there. But the plus I would see from that is that it is now being regulated at the times of business, where the experience that I've had, I can't regulate it. because it's gone under the radar for such a long while, it's been deemed that they've got permission. So that would be one good thing that would come out of it. The times are regulated for the delivery. But as I say, it's not necessarily the impact on this road, it's the impact on Anstey itself, the HGVs going down. We're calling them HGVs, an 18-wheeler thingamybobs. Do we know it's going to be that? Is that the permission that they've got for vehicles of that size?
There's no restriction on what vehicles can use that property at the moment, but obviously the objections we've received have been in relation to the larger HGV vehicles, but there could be a variety of different size vehicles used in the site.
Happy with that, Councillor Seaton? Yeah, Councillor Smith-Bits next, please.
I had much the same queries as my colleague. This is retrospective planning application, isn't it? So it doesn't automatically go through. So today we went in the coach and it was quite difficult to turn. So I don't know the length of a heavy goods vehicle. I note the restrictions that are put on, but I'd like to actually see one of their vehicles actually manoeuvring and going through. Would it be possible to defer this where an officer actually saw a lorry, heavy goods vehicle manoeuvring round?
Thank you, Councillor Smith-Bits. Ms Wallace, do you want to respond to that?
Do you mean the wider highway network or manoeuvring into the site? Do you mean the wider highway network or manoeuvring into the site? Yes, so I went back to the Highways Authority and they advised that what could be used, what traffic could serve the existing use would be similar to what sort of would be for the chip generation exercise, and they don't, and the number of trips would not require us to assess it in the wider highway network. So I went back to them, and the junction, it falls below the threshold where a junction capacity assessment would be required. So we couldn't go back and ask for that. The Highways Authority have visited the site, I understand, and done the Highway Authority have visited the site and done their assessment based on what's happening on the site. And I say we have to look at what the building could be used for, as well as what potentially it could be used for. So I'm not sure we could go out and just watch a HGV vehicle manoeuvre around the village when the Highways Authority advises it is not likely to lead to a severe impact on highway safety, which is what we're judging the application against. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, if I may just add to that, and it's probably mentioned already, but in the listed conditions, if you actually look at or reflect on the reasons for the condition 3, is that there's a need to require adequate off-street parking provision, as well as to enable vehicles to enter and leave the site in a forward direction in the interests of highway safety. So the reasons set out by Mrs Wallace and what's set out in the published report, I think we've reasonably addressed the highway concerns that have raised and the concerns that have been raised regarding the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Upton. After that. So I've got Councillor Fryer next and then Councillor Matthews after that. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much. Just a matter of clarification. I was on the site visit today as well, and this application is to move the lamppost so they can be an in and out of the drive or the frontage of the building, which doesn't exist at the moment. So what the vehicles are doing is moving in front of the building, but then having to reverse out. Am I correct? And this will enable them to have more traffic control, in as much vehicles will enter one side and exit the other.
The access to sort of the the top of the site is a suitable width, and that's the one that I understand that all the vehicles have been using, because the one to the southwest isn't a suitable width. I think there was a sort of a chain across it when we visited there today. So yes, it's to widen that one, and they've provided tracking information to the Highways Authority to show how a HGV can access the site, manoeuvre within it and exit in a forward gear with those two new, well, the improved access and the existing access.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Matthews.
Right, yeah, so I think the main fundamental issue with this site is the vehicles, size of vehicles, coming in and out, up and down this road. But I think the most important thing here that I'm looking at is the highways have approved this without any concerns whatsoever. And I think that is a very important piece of text that we have to listen to, really. I've got concerns, of course. It's not the biggest road in the world, and it is a residential road, of course. I've listened to all the arguments, but I think really with highways very clear on this, I think we should really move to accept Officer's recommendations on this one, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matthews. So we have a motion to accept on the table. Councillor Infield, are you seconding?
I'd like to add a comment. I was at the site today. As we heard, the real issue here is HGV movements and the safety of entrance and access and exit from the site. There was an HGV parked up there today. I could see that to get out, it was going to have to do something really quite awkward, not particularly safe, but I could see the obvious advantage of the plan changes so that you'd have an entrance, it would park up and it would exit forwards. And as we've just heard, Highways have approved this arrangement. I think we have no planning reasons to turn it down. So I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Infield. And just so that we're all understanding, there are some additional amendments to the conditions in the extras report that relate to extending the time of the drop curb. Are you happy for those to be included in your recommendation, in your motion? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors that wish to come in? Councillor Smidowitz?
I'm sorry, just one question. It says on page 69 that videos and photographic evidence has been submitted. We didn't see any.
Ms Wallace, do we know where that is?
Yes, it's been submitted by objectors. It's all within the public file. The photos are online with the objection letters. The videos, we didn't have the capacity to put them online, but they've been seen and viewed by myself as the officer. Just sort of to reassure you that with the high level of objection we've had and the concerns with regards to the movements and the suitability of the highways, I did go back to the Highways Authority and expressed all those concerns and asked them sort of for clarification, and that's set out within the report, and they did come back and say they are satisfied with what is proposed in terms of highway safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion? And that's unanimous?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr Gill. So that one has passed. So with that, we move on to our next application, which is item 5D, P/23/0238/2, land off Coates Road in Barrow. We'll just give it a second for the gallery to clear. Okay, so I'll refer to our planning officer for this application, which will be Mr Upton. Mr Upton.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully I can be heard. I know the microphones are a bit different from our normal venue. Yes, this is a site that members will have seen in recent times in terms of the wider allocation of HA49 in Barrow. And this is, you may recall, we've got 5 parcels that are identified within the allocation. So if we just flick on a couple of slides, so that slide really shows you the parcels that we have. So at the bottom of that slide, parcel E was the subject of the non-determination appeal earlier in the year. Then at our June committee meeting, we visited and considered parcel D, and this site in the thicker red line is parcel B. It's a fairly regular parcel of land. If we just go back, if we can. So that's it. So it's a regular parcel of land. It's to accommodate up to 60 dwellings. It has access as shown there. It's an outline application with access being considered this evening. As you can see to the right-hand side of the slide, we saw it today on site, that you've got the existing roundabout, which is at the junction of Coates Road and Willow Road, and there's an additional arm proposed to access this outline proposal this evening, so that's for determination this evening. All other matters are reserved for future consideration. You can see an existing cul-de-sac of houses to the south of the site, and to the north of relatively open areas. There is one residential property, just the context. So you've got HA 49, of which this is part. We also considered in the June agenda another proposal on the HA 48, which is the site, you'll recall, that also contains residential development and the proposed primary school. Sorry, just...
Go back, sorry.
So the thick red line again shows a site on the right hand side of this slide, and you can see in angled letters you got the local wildlife sites, the Catsick wildlife site, and also the Railway Fields wildlife site, which are on the sort of southwestern border of the allocation, and beyond that you've got the green lung, if you like, there, which is the River Soar corridor notated. Next slide, please. Again, that's it. So we have a concept master plan, just back one. It's racing away with itself. So just to show that more clearly, so this is the concept master plan. You will have seen this before, members, because it was the one, and this application is aligned to that master plan. Which was approved in June when we looked at parcel D, and this application this evening adopts the same approach in terms of the master plan. So you can see on the southwest side it's proposed where clearly with wildlife sites along that boundary, this scheme is sensitive to that, adopts the same master plan. So you can see approximately just under half of the site on the sort of southern and western side of the tranche, thank you, just showing that with a cursor, is for SUDS features and green features and infrastructure, so green and blue on the concept master plan. Next slide, please. And again, in addition, in terms of character and place making, the applicant has provided a bit more detail there. So the black lines you can see in the arrows are key sort of views and vistas. So there's one as you enter the site on the eastern side near the roundabout, which we saw today, and you can see on that aerial photography. And there would be some greenery to the site frontage, and the purple lines that you can see there are frontages that will be created by the detailed proposals when they come forward through reserved matters, so a key frontage, and there'd also be a further view point as you come out of the green-blue infrastructure to the west, which is greyed out on that slide, and you can see access routes proposed through as well. Next slide, please. In terms of this evening, the main point that we're approving, as well as looking at the master plan, which aligns to the previous approval on parcel D, is the access point, so that additional arm that comes off the existing roundabout on Willow Road, and that will provide access. If we just go back to the master plan, one more. Yeah, if we go back to the master plan, you can see the red arrow near the top of that slide, near the roundabout, Thank you, Jennifer. So this would ultimately, when all the parcels are in place, provide the northern access to the loop that goes through the allocation, with the previous one that we saw in June, the red arrow to the southern end there. That is through parcel D. So you would get a loop all the way up through the allocation, and that is in concept form. Clearly reserved matters will provide a bit more detail and flesh on the bones for the proposal. Just go through the slide pack. So in terms of the key considerations, the principle of developments there, HA 49, we've seen other elements of it come forward over the last few months. The concept master plan we've just looked at, it does adopt the same as we saw for parcel D. And the two master plans, there was clearly for the parcel E, the appeal proposal, a separate master plan, but as the inspector said at that stage, they are living documents, and it didn't preclude other master plans coming forward as we've seen in June. So there are two master plans, and this adopts the second approach. Access we've seen, it's been carefully considered by the Highway Authority, and there are no concerns there. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, we have got the report in the extras. So the site overall has some impacts there. So broadly speaking, there is an acceptable baseline. However, elements of the post-development assessment are unrealistic, leading to an underestimate of the impacts of the scheme. So those are set out in extras. But as the ecologist concludes, it's an outline application, and the precise details of impacts would normally be a reserved matter. So based on the proposal, it would almost certainly result in a net loss requiring off-site compensation, and some conditions are proposed. One of the conditions, the length, is already in the published report, and there is an additional condition proposed this evening regarding the lighting, so that's set out in the extras report. So that's in addition recommended this evening. And in terms of the obligations, they are set out within the published report in terms of securing appropriate compensation in terms of biodiversity interests. So they're set out in 9.15, 0.14 and 0.15 of the published report. So those issues are dealt with. And just generally, there was an additional condition as well with regard to archaeology, which is referenced in the published report in the assessment section, but does not appear in the schedule of conditions. So we've picked that up with colleagues in the heritage team at County, and we are suggesting an additional condition this evening to look at a written scheme of investigation. So it's within the assessment, but it just didn't get translated through to the conditions. So that's recommended this evening. And on that point, I will recommend, plus what we've said in extras, to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Upton. That brings us on to speakers for this application. We have two, the first of whom is Mr Stuart Field, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. You have 3 minutes, Mr Fields. When 1 minute remains, Ms Dobson will let you know whenever you're ready, or if you could just turn the microphone on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Stuart Field, and I'm Planning Director at St Phillips, the applicant for this application. We're an SME house builder and promoter based in the Midlands. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in support of this outline application for up to 60 homes and associated infrastructure. I'm part of an allocated site in the adopted local plan, and I endorse the officer's recommendation to approve the application. The site and allocation, HA 49, I'm sure will be well known to many of you, having already discussed and approved Ashbury's outline application on parcel D only 2 months ago. I also confirm the officer's additional conditions in the extras report are acceptable to St Phillips. The principle of development is acceptable by virtue of the wider HA 49 allocation in the adopted local plan, and the proposals meeting all criteria within the allocation policy itself. The application is supported by a full and comprehensive suite of technical and environmental reports. The development brief has been prepared and has been subject of discussion with officers and consultees since the application was submitted 3.5 years ago. As confirmed by officers, we are working to the same development brief and master plan as Ashbury. We agree with the officers and that the development brief and master plan will ensure that a comprehensive, sustainable and policy compliant development of allocation for HA49 will be achieved. The development will deliver up to 60 homes, including 30% affordable homes on a site allocated by this council for residential development. The development will therefore ensure much needed housing is delivered in a sustainable location and delivered as part of a comprehensive, coherent and coordinated manner with others as part of the HA49 allocation. The proposals will deliver a high-level quality development and will include public open space whilst protecting the local wildlife site. The development brief provides further specification to ensure stringent design parameters will be compliant with as part of subsequent reserve matters applications. As confirmed by your officers on-site B&G compensation is achievable. The B&G assessment and technical notes set out how this would be achieved in line with the policy requirements at the time of the submission and will be secured by conditions. The exact provision of B&G will be dealt with at reserve matter stage. The development will also deliver further important benefits, including the provision of significant financial contributions towards education, including a new primary school, healthcare, community facilities, all of which will be secured through a Section 106 agreement totaling around £1 million. I respectfully therefore request members to support the officer's recommendation and approve the application subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to our next speaker, which is Councillor Sandra Forrest, Chair of Borough of Consall Parish Council. I'm sure you know the drill, Councillor Forrest. If you could just turn the microphone on and whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me? Chair, members, I have 5 questions about this application. Firstly, does it comply with your policy? HA49 requires comprehensive development of the whole allocation. Are members satisfied this requirement is met when Parcel E has a different master plan and Parcels A and C have not yet come forward? Secondly, does it comply with HA49's housing allocation, which is allocated for 220 dwellings? Parcel E has 70 and Parcel D 130. Parcel B at 60, taking these 3 schemes to 260, with Parcels A and C still to come forward. What is the policy justification for that increase? And where has the infrastructure for those additional dwellings been demonstrated? Thirdly, has the education impact been resolved? The LEA says additional dwellings above the planned HA49 provision requires a robust and enforceable mechanism for a sustainable education solution. So what is that mechanism for these 40 dwellings, and is it secured? If not, how can this be sustainable development? Fourthly, has the appeal inspector's concern about traffic flow through the HA49 been resolved? In what way does this application demonstrate a solution to that problem? If the answer is it will be at a later stage, how can members be certain that approving Parcel B now will not prejudice the comprehensive strategy required by HA49? Finally, housing supply. The question is not simply whether these 60 homes can be delivered, it is whether they can be delivered in a sustainable, comprehensive development of HA49. If members cannot be satisfied that this application complies with policy DS2, including comprehensive development, education capacity, and necessary infrastructure, it should be refused or deferred until those matters are resolved. Thank you. Thank you, members, for listening to me this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forrest. So before we move on to members' discussion, is there anything that you'd like to respond to, officers, from either of the speakers?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, it's set out within the report in terms of the policy implications of the proposals. It has clearly been set out that there are, particularly in terms of harms and benefits, there are some harms arising from the proposal in the final throes of the report. You can see that. But there are also very significant benefits. You'll see, as I mentioned earlier, that the master plan proposed is one that has already been approved through the consideration of Parcel D, and there's nothing untoward about this proposal coming forward under those same auspices. Members will see in the conditions that there is reference back to various documents to ensure that once details come forward through the reserve matters, the appropriate policy provisions will be fully addressed. And you can only do that, as I mentioned earlier, with biodiversity, for example, once full details are known. So there are provisions both within the conditions and within the proposed obligations to secure policy compliant contributions and infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Are there any members that wish to speak? Councillor Smidovic.
I've just noticed that the identikit example of houses is echoing through this. You've seen one, you've seen them all. So is that being revised? Do we have a definite different picture of houses rather than one that's just plonked because it matches the needs of that particular number of houses, if that makes sense?
Mr. Upton.
In terms of identikit, there has been some considerable thought and discussion around coming forward with the master plan and brief. And again, we won't know the detail of those proposals until we have the reserve matters. We are just considering the overarching documents. If I just go to the conditions this evening, I'd point members in particular to the earlier conditions. So we have got a list of plans in terms of illustrative master plan, concept master plan, and in terms of the other documents there should be a broad accordance with the wider master plan, which is depicted in the submitted design and access statement. So there is flexibility to look at the detailed design and expectations of the detailed design when reserve matters are considered. So, yeah, far from phraseology used in terms of identikit, there is the opportunity to bring forward a well-designed proposal when the details are considered at that reserve matters stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the officers. This is and has been for some time. It's a major scheme for the whole of the village, but it is very complicated and quite difficult to understand. I have a couple of questions for clarification, please. I would refer to page 152 of the report, and we're discussing about capacity assessments for road junctions or some of the junctions, and I don't know whether, hopefully the officer will be able to help me. we've listed 5 main places like the A60, Coates Road, Willow Road. I must admit, and probably it's my fault for not going through the papers earlier, I'm disappointed to see that there's no mention of the junction, Coates Road and the High Street. There's no sort of plans of how, even if it was traffic lights or something, to cope with that, because particularly from the development, bearing in mind that Humphrey Perkins School is on Coates Road, has, I don't know the exact number, but it's well over 500-600 pupils. You've got a lot of buses, you've got a lot of traffic, and there doesn't seem to be any consideration of looking at that and capacity. Is that something we can ask for and add it into, that they look at that? Or do we just have to go that they're only looking at these 5 junctions? The other point I would like to raise is with education. I'm delighted that we're going to have another school in the village, and primary school. I was a bit worried about the fact that until the school is built, which could be sometime after the houses are built, I presume, that it might be necessary for children who can't go to the current primary school, have to be transported to other schools somewhere. I mean, at the top of page 184, it says financial contribution towards the transport of pupils from this development to nearby schools. Where are nearby schools? The other side of Loughborough, Melton Mowbray. So I'm presuming it would be because they're talking about the development of primary school, it will be children up to about the age of 11. Is there a minimum age that they would not transport but could walk to the school? I'm also concerned, and this is my last one, I promise, is on 185 when they're talking about the NHS. They're saying they would improve the capacity, the amount of money from the development would improve the capacity at Barrow Health Centre, but also at Beaumont Road, which I'm not sure where that is, or Highgate, which I'm presuming are in Loughborough. I don't know, I should have looked it up, to meet the increased demand. Well, if I'm my age and I'm not feeling well, I live alone, I can get to the current village health centre, but if they can't take me, how would I get to Beaumont Road? Is that Beaumont Road is Loughborough and Highgate is Sileby, or can someone clarify that for me? Those are my points. But I do hope that it will be a well thought out development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Mr Upton, would you like to respond to those points?
Oh, sorry.
I'm green, I'm red, I'm green, I'm red. Yeah. Yes, so I think there were three points principally. Yeah, so in terms of the junction capacities, it's common practice, and I'm assuming it was the case in this case, that before detailed work is carried out on relevant capacity assessments and what have you, there is a discussion between the developer and the highway authority to see what is reasonable in terms of assessing different junctions. So I've got no doubt to believe that didn't take place in this case. Even if it didn't, the highway authority clearly have officers who look at their patch and the area and assess appropriate junctions. So hopefully that gives you some comfort that the appropriate junctions and capacity assessments have been carried out. And I'm sure they will be known not just for this slither, if you like, this this element of the proposal, but across all the different elements. In terms of the nearby schools, it's set out in the papers that where the transport for pupils in terms of that contribution would go. So the capacity would be nearby schools when the capacity at Barrow Hall is exceeded. Again, in terms of the Education Authority, they'd determine which the most local schools were there. And in terms of the health contribution, which was the third point, those, again, looking at the ICB, those would be, like the other elements of this allocation, they would be the most practicable alternative locations for improving facilities. So, we've got nothing to contradict that, and it's a reasonable approach that they're taking, I think, to balance the needs between those different practices. So there are options for accommodating the increased capacity from this site as well as the other tranches of this allocation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Upton. I'm hoping that as the other applications come forward, we may have a bit more detail. I still don't know where Beaumont Road Surgery is or Highgate Medical Centre, but I hope that we could have more clarification when it comes to the detailed application. And I have noted about the schools, I think a lot seems to depend on the LCC and highways. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Mr. Gill.
Yes, Chair. Beaumont Road is in Loughborough and Highgate is in Selby. And the Highgate Medical Centre is in Sileby.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Lenny. Councillor Lenny.
Yeah, I was a bit concerned and I didn't know or check back for the total for that package HA49 that we were already exceeding the amount of properties that we should have built. If we have only 50 on the final two packages, that'll bring the amount of homes built there to 50% more than was originally planned. And I know that's what we're being urged to do, but it leaves you stranded when you're trying to plan for everything else. And I'd like to know if it is true that we're already above the amount of homes for that package of land HA49, or whether are we not building any more on the other slices of land, because you don't expect to have a 50% increase in the number of planned buildings in one area that you've got in your local planners being almost, not quite, but almost set in stone, as it were. Thank you.
Mr. Upton.
Yes, in terms of the numbers, they will be, as was referenced earlier, above the allocated number, but that doesn't, and that was part of the reasons we were concerned about the appeal proposal coming forward, which was over and above what was estimated for that particular parcel at the start of the allocation. But in terms of bringing other sites forward, we have to assess those. There's no sort of cap. The allocation does state an anticipated level, but it doesn't provide a cap on what might come forward. The key thing for us as a planning authority is to consider the impacts of the numbers of homes that come forward on any particular site. As we've already gone through this evening, those impacts, highway impacts, biodiversity impacts, education impacts, health impacts, that whole range of impacts are considered as we take applications through an assessment process. Clearly, this is an outline proposal. It's had a full range of consultation from relevant technical consultees, received their inputs, and the development can be accommodated for up to 60 dwellings on this plot this evening, given the conditions and obligations set out within the report. So that covers the range of technical and planning issues that we need to consider for that level of development coming forward on this allocation, taking into account the other sites that we've already approved as well. Hopefully that gives you some clarity. Thank you, Chair.
Can I come back? This seems to be a growing phenomenon in the Charnwood area, that housing land is allocated and then they split it up into little bits, and you keep wondering why, and then something surprising and not particularly pleasant turns up and you just think, that's the reason why. So should we treat these blocks of land in the local plan as being nothing like what we expected after all? And should we be on guard against splitting up these blocks of land?
Mr Upton.
Well, I'm not sure I've seen anything particularly unpleasant in terms of what's being proposed. What's being proposed is housing. There's set out within the extras report the publication of the updated National Planning Policy Framework. There were already provisions within both national policy and more local policies to use land efficiently, and in allocating sites for development, we give a nominal sum of housing that we'd anticipate coming forward through different allocations. In terms of the NPPF, it has reiterated that desire through policy to make efficient use of land, and I don't think it's needing to be particularly wary. I think where we are looking at an allocated site, we do need to be conscious, as I say, of all the technical issues should somebody come forward with a more intensive proposal than those initial numbers would suggest. But we do carefully look at the range of planning issues and bring forward appropriate recommendations as we have this evening. So, yeah, we do give an estimated number of dwellings because we have to, show that through our evidence base to develop a local plan, that we have got a robust strategy to meet some of our requirements, but it doesn't preclude people coming forward, as we've seen, with more efficient uses of different sites and allocations. We're not just doing this ourselves. Clearly, the inspectorate did that on the parcel E that we saw at the southern end of this allocation. So we're doing a similar thing this evening, looking at that overall picture, and can a proposal of this scale be accommodated on that allocation? And the answer, having looked at all the technical inputs, is that it can be, with appropriate conditions and obligations to secure the necessary infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors which wish to speak?
I'm just thinking to myself, if I was looking to move to Barrow, what would I be looking for? So I can't get into the GP surgery. I can't get into a school for my children. I can't actually get to park in the centre of the village. There's no bank, there's no post office. There doesn't seem to be anything that I would need with a small family. And possibly the drains would flood, so we'd get back up in the loo. And I've already drowned my car in slash lanes, so I don't want to repeat that. So why would I come to Barrow?
Officers, do you wish to respond to that?
I think I'll decline on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to come in? Councillor Seaton.
Tongue in cheek.
all of this about doctors, dentists, surgeries, etc. Are very important planning matters, and they are all considered when drawing up the local plan, and the intentions are there, but they're all market-led. At the end of the day, they are market-led, and we've just got to, I don't know, just go like that sometimes to find out whether they will come off or not, because they are market-led. The council can't provide them just because we've said on the plan, ideally we'd want this, ideally we'd want that, ideally we'd want that. But somebody has to come forward to provide my 90 care bed home and a doctor's surgery and a community centre as well. It's hard enough to manage the community centres that we've got without the thought of building more for these new developments. But we've got to take the positive things from this, and joining up that development makes it's quite attractive. It joins it up. The one thing I'm concerned about is, I know it sounds funny, the cemetery in the middle, because I don't know whether it would have had a field in mind after the 50 years is up, just to extend the cemetery. And I know there is a field at the side of it that's not being built on, so I don't know whether they've sort of talked about having that as an extension to the cemetery. But that needs to be considered because of the amount of building that is happening in that village. But we are where we are, and I think it's quite an attractive look, and I would go with officers' recommendations, and that's a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaton. Are there any other councillors that wish to come in? No? Okay. I did just have a couple of points I wanted to run past you, Mr. Upton. And I appreciate you may have already touched on this at least in your initial response to Councillor Forrest. I was scribbling my notes. For making you repeat yourself, I apologise. But we did, last time we had an allocation on this, a parcel on this allocation of land, we had this issue of the dualling master plans, and that there'd been some confusion, and there'd been the appeal as well. So are we, this is going with the second of the two master plans, isn't it, that we've got on the table? Are we happy that this application complies with that, and that there's not going to be any further conflict between those two, or would approval of this application essentially lock in that second master plan? Just a bit more information about how those interact with this application.
Yes, as we set out earlier, it does, use the right expression, it does adopt, if you like, the approach taken in Parcel D in terms of the master plan. And the condition I mentioned earlier is condition 3, and for the development to come forward in broad accordance with the wider master plan as depicted in the submitted design and access statement. There are also follow-on conditions there that talk about what we'd expect from the reserve matters submissions. So there were things that have been picked up, sort of that the main street should be compliant with relevant standards, and various other elements should actually be picked up through the reserve matters submissions. So hopefully that gives you some comfort. There's also a long list of benefits set out within the concluding sections of the report, and also where there's not complete accordance with DS2 and HA49, that they're set out and how those can be addressed as well on pages 177 and 178. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Upton.
Sorry, Chair, just before if you are moving to a recommendation, just to point out, if we've got that recommendation, it does include the additional verbal updates through the extras with a couple of additional conditions, and also the fact that we'd seek to lock in contributions and look at the appropriate obligations regarding biodiversity.
Yeah. Are you happy with that,
Chair.
Councillor Seaton? Yeah. So we do have a proposal on the table to accept officers' recommendations from Councillor Seaton. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Matthews. Okay. And if no one has anything further to add, we'll go to the vote. All of those in favour? Any against? And any abstentions? One abstention.
One abstention. So that's 12 for the motion, none against, one abstention, so the motion is passed.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mr Gill. So with that, we move on to our next and final planning application for the evening, which is 5E, which is P/26/0203/2, which is 245 Ratcliffe Road in Sowerby. Councillor Matthews. 30 seconds, but actually, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No.
Right, now that Councillor Matthews is back, that's all right, we'll get cracking. So, yeah, 245 Ratcliffe Road in Sowerby. The officer for this one is Mr Akram. Whenever you're ready, Mr Akram.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. Item 5E relates to the demolition of the dwelling and incidental buildings and erection of a 72-bed care home, use class C2. This is an outline application with access, layout, scale, and appearance for consideration at this stage. And where it's highlighted, the landscaping is reserved for future determination. Before moving on to the presentation, members should note the extras report, which provides updates on the new MPPF, updated consultation response and conditions. I will refer to these during the presentation. This is the application site outlined in red. The site is located to the northeast of Ratcliffe Road and, the site is located to the northeast of Ratcliffe Road and the east of Sowerby. The existing two-storey dwelling with any kind of incidental kind of buildings is situated to the southeast of the site. And members may recall from the site visit that the northwestern part of the site has been excavated as a result of its former brickwork use. This area is now grassed over and has assimilated into the surrounding landscape and forms part of the garden area to this property. The site is bounded by mature trees and vegetation along all its boundaries. This is the area view with the application site outlined in red. You've got the two Peasville Farm residential developments highlighted in yellow. The first phase has been completed and the second phase, as you noted from the site visit, is under construction. You've got a public right-of-way that runs from Ratcliffe Road in a southeast kind of direction towards Rosemenian Way. And that's where, to the northwestern side, you've got the Sowerby Village Centre. This is the extract from Local Plans Policies Map. And as you can see, the application site in red is outside the limits to development for Sowerby and within a countryside location. These are some of the internal photographs of the site. You've got the top left. This is from the parking courtyard towards the embankment, and neighbouring property number 229 in the northwest direction. The top right and bottom left are views from the actual top of the embankment, where towards the side of the existing property and the rear boundaries of the arable field, adjoining the arable field itself. And then the bottom you've got is a rear elevation of the existing property and the neighbouring property in the background. This slide shows this slide shows some. Sorry, yeah. Okay. This slide shows some of the actual viewpoints taken from the landscape visual assessment. These are viewpoints taken from the public right-of-way in the northwest and the southeast kind of direction. And as you can see, this is where the position of the application site is, and there's a buffer of trees all along that boundary. These are some more viewpoints from the landscape visual assessment. So you got the top image view from Ratcliffe Road on a higher ground to the northwest of the site, looking southeast direction. And this is where the position just beyond these trees is where the application site is, and the actual dwelling. You got the middle image, which is a view from Excelsior Way, which forms part of the Pisa Farm development. And this is the position where you've got the application dwelling there, and that is the actual site itself. And the last is the actual property itself, number 245, within the application site, and that's beyond that. So this is site layout, this is site layout to be considered as part of this outline application. Access is provided to the south of the site, with the care home buildings positioned centrally within the site, and you've got the parking and service area to the rear. You've got the incidental structures such as a refuse store, substation, and so on, located adjacent to the access or rear parking area. The area highlighted in green indicates the tree and vegetation to be retained as part of this current application. This is the proposed access arrangement, which forms part of this current application. The vehicle access would be, vehicle and pedestrian access would be from Ratcliffe Road, and to the northeastern part, you've got a 2-metre footway, pedestrian footway to the site. This slide illustrates the proposed scale and appearance of the care home building. The southeast elevation and the southwest elevation, they front onto Ratcliffe Road and Access Road itself, and whilst the northwest elevation forms the side elevation of the building towards embankment neighbouring property number 229, Ratcliffe Road. This is some sections of street scene and the sections that provides a context in terms of the site's ground levels. The upper ground levels in relation with the surrounding area, including neighbouring properties. The upper image shows the views along Ratcliffe Road as it slopes down towards the right, and the lower image illustrates the relationship of the proposed care home building with the existing tree vegetation with Ratcliffe Road as it rises towards the roundabout, in context with the roundabout and the properties on Excelsior Way. This is a computer-generated image that illustrates the proposed views of the care home and access road from Ratcliffe Road frontage. This slide shows the landscape strategy, which is indicative at this stage and is subject to reserve matters for future considerations. The strategy seeks to retain and enhance the site's mature landscape features, such as you've got the mature boundary treatment in terms of trees and vegetation. As far as key considerations, these are set out within the committee report and extras report. I'll just go summarize in terms of a few of them. Section 9.1 of the Plans Committee's report provides detailed assessment of the principle of development, including considerations of planning policy, identified need for specialist housing, and the applicant's alternative assessment. Members should note that reference within the Plans Committee report refers to 11D of the MPPF 2024 that refers in regards to tentative balance, which is no longer applicable following the publication of the new MPPF earlier this month. Proposal has therefore been reassessed against the new MPPF as set out in the extras report. The site lies outside, but immediately adjacent to the limited development of Saibi, a designated service centre. As a result, the presumption in favour of sustainable development under policy S3 of the MPPF applies, and policy S5 is a relevant national planning policy for determining developments outside the settlement. As you are aware, the council currently cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply with a supply of 3.56, including the required buffer, and the latest housing delivery test is below the 75 threshold. Therefore, policies S5-1J of the MPPF is engaged. Officers are satisfied that the proposal meets the criteria of this policy as it is physically well related to Selby, a sustainable service centre, and can accommodate without unacceptable pressure on the infrastructure. The development also includes measures to support sustainable transport, healthcare provision as part of the Section 106 agreement. There's no restriction that would apply in the case of policy S52. The proposed 72-bed care home would make a significant contribution towards meeting identified need of the older person's accommodation, and is equivalent to approximately 38 dwellings for housing land supply purposes. This benefit attracts substantial weight in the planning balance and accords with housing policies of the new MPPF and local plan. Whilst the development remains contrary to countryside policy C1 of the local plan, it supports the objectives of housing policies such as housing for older people and housing need as per the local plan and the MPPF. All other matters such as the layout, scale, appearance, ecology, residential amenity, highway safety, and so on are all considered acceptable, subject to appropriate mitigation, planning conditions, and Section 106 agreement. These matters are not considered to conflict with any national decision-making policies as set out in the MPPF as per extras report. Overall, having regards to the presumption in favour of sustainable development, together with assessment of the local plan within the committee report and the extras report, officers can conclude that the benefits of the proposal, particularly the delivery of the specialist housing for older people, are not substantially outweighed by any identified adverse harm. The publication of the new MPPF does not alter the overall planning balance, and the recommendation put forward to members is to approve subject to the completion of Section 106 as set out in Recommendation A of the Plans Committee report, and planning conditions as set out within Recommendation B of the Committee report and Extras report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akram. That brings us on to speakers for this item. Our first speaker is Miss Amy Patterson, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant. Whenever you're ready, Ms Patterson, you have 3 minutes, and Ms Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. That's quite all right, Councillor Seaton. Sorry, please continue, Ms Patterson.
Firstly, thank you to the Chair and members for the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of Aspire. We all recognise that people are living longer, and with that comes an increasing need for specialist care. In Charnwood, there is an acute shortfall of modern, purpose-built care accommodation. Behind those statistics are older, local residents, parents, grandparents, neighbours and friends, many of whom are currently unable to access the level of care and dignity they deserve close to the communities they know and love. At the heart of this proposal are some of the most vulnerable members of our community. This care home will provide 24/7 care to 72 residents who are no longer able to live independently and who require daily support. These are individuals whose mobility is often limited, so do not drive, and whose needs are very different from those of residents in conventional housing. The care home has therefore been designed specifically around those needs, including the provision of appropriate parking for staff and visiting family members. As part of our commitment to ensure staff can travel sustainably to the care home, we will be providing travel packs and free bus passes to those that request them as soon as the care home is operational. These measures will be secured through the legal agreement. The benefits of the proposal extend beyond care provision alone. The care home will make a valuable contribution towards meeting local housing needs, as a 72-bedroom care home also counts as the council delivering 38 new homes. This means that fewer other development sites need to be found to meet local housing needs. As requested by the NHS Integrated Care Board, the statutory organisation responsible for planning and managing health services to meet needs of the local population, we will be providing a significant contribution of almost £29,000 towards making improvements to local services. The care home will not have any adverse impact on capacity of local GP services, particularly thanks to the on-site care staff, who actually help to relieve reliance on the NHS. A significant number of new jobs will also be created to ensure the successful day-to-day operation of the care home in a variety of roles, including gardening, maintenance, catering, administration, as well as caring and nursing and during the construction stages. These are meaningful, long-term jobs that will contribute to the local economy. Environmental responsibility is another key element of the scheme. The care home has been designed to achieve high standards of sustainability by having solar panels, air source heat pumps, and electric vehicle charging facilities. It will also not increase flood risk elsewhere. Existing high-quality trees will be retained, additional tree and hedgerow planting will be introduced, and new habitats, including rain gardens, will enhance biodiversity and create spaces where wildlife can thrive. This application is about providing dignity, care and security for older people at a time when they need it most. It's about supporting families, creating jobs, improving healthcare provision and delivering a sustainable development that responds to the clear and pressing local need.
Thank you very much, Ms Patterson. That brings us to our next speaker, which is the Ward Councillor, Councillor Bottomley. Whenever you're ready, Councillor Bottomley, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This application is very light on the details regarding how developers intend to support the GP capacity for Sowerby, given the expected increased demand a care home would bring. Although I appreciate we've just heard that this will not increase the demand on GPs, I feel like I must gently push back on that. Even if all residents come from within the Sowerby area, more families would then move into their previous accommodation and you would still have an increase in people registered at the GP surgery. And although they will have specialist staff on site, by its very nature, people who need to live in a care home would need a higher level of care than your average resident. As borough councillors, we fought long and hard to get the bank's GP surgery extension application accepted, to use previously allocated S106 funds to extend their practice to attempt to keep up with the demand of previous developments. Without carefully thinking through how this care home application will impact the demand for both GP services, we risk putting the local capacity back to before square one. The GPs have raised concerns, both through the planning consultation process and with us, about their own capacity. They will be potentially put in the impossible position of having to choose whose needs they meet, which is entirely avoidable with proper planning in regards to health services in this area in relation to this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bottomley. Before we move to the discussion, is there anything that planning officers would like to come back on? Anything you'd like to respond to there?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of the healthcare, there's a number of sections. So, for example, the healthcare provision, it's addressed under section 9.14 and 9.15 of the Plans Committee report. So the 9.1 goes with in terms of the health impact and also in terms of what the mitigations are. And as far as the statutory consultee is concerned, is that they've requested that they raise no objection subject to contribution to address that mitigation. And as the health section also details in terms of not just about the planning permission for the extension for the bank surgery, but also about different section 106 healthcare contribution, what the surgeries, whether it is Highgate or whether it is the banks that have taken in terms of trying to digitalise records and create additional clinical or consultation rooms within the medical practices as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. Are there any councillors that wish to speak? Councillor Matthews.
Hi. So, when I went through all the papers last night of everything we're sitting down for tonight, every application, this is the one that took the least amount of my time, really. I can't really see any reason to reject this application at all. I think it's a fantastic application, if I'm quite honest. I really do. Listening to the comments from Spire's representative tonight, there's a lot of promises in there of things that they don't really have to do, but they're offering to do anyway, which I think is fantastic. But they really do want to make a commitment to this care home in this area, and I think it'll be a fabulous contribution to the community. And I cannot see any reason whatsoever why we should be rejecting this application at all. And I am very much of the opinion we should be accepting officers' recommendations and approving this application without delay.
Okay, is that a proposal? Yes, it is. Okay. Well, I had Councillor Lenny next.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just looking again over the contributions for healthcare, and I believe it's 28,800 one-off payment towards the local healthcare board, which would be that barely cover 1 6-month period, I would have thought, for 72 elderly people. And I just wondered what happens to the rest of it, because those doctors are going to be impacted for as long as that care home is there. What are they supposed to do?
Mr. Akram.
Right. Thank you, Chair. In terms of the contribution, we are guided by, in terms of our statutory consultee, which is integrated care board, what they would specify. And they also are guided by, in terms of the actual civil regulations and what, in terms of the impact and what it would generate, and in terms of the mitigation. And as far as their comments are concerned, is that what they've specified is that there will be additional 72 patients being accommodated, but then they use a formula in terms of the standard area, meters per square. And if you multiply that with anything else, and that comes to 28,800. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akram.
Yeah.
Councillor Lenny.
Yes, that's disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you. I had Councillor O'Neill next.
Thank you. First of all, obvious point to point out, this is it's described as an outline application, but it is actually pretty much a full application bar landscaping. So whatever we agree tonight is what we get. Just to make you aware of that, because I wasn't aware of that until I was on the bus this afternoon. I think the impact of this development on the healthcare of the wider community will be very large. 72 residents with unable to live independently was what the representative said. And the report describes them as having a wide range of medical needs. I don't understand, following up on the point of Councillor Lenny, how the number 28,000 has been reached. Okay, so the number 72, which is the number of projected number of residents, has been multiplied by the floor space for each allocated to each resident, and that's come up to 28,000. That is a drop in the ocean. These people will have complicated medical needs. They will require a lot of medical supervision. 28,000 doesn't even begin, in my view, to address those needs. If you look on page 211 of your report, you will see the comments from the bank's GP surgery, which raise significant concerns about the impact of this care home on the ability of that surgery to meet the needs of the local community. I don't understand how the Integrated Care Board has reached the number 28,000. I am very, very, very unwilling to vote for this. I totally agree we need care for elderly people. We're an ageing population, state the obvious. People will need increased healthcare as they age. I don't think that 28,000 really even begins to touch that. And I am very unwilling to vote for this unless I know how that number was reached. I suspect a far more complex formula needs to be used to arrive at a figure that really begins to meet the financial cost of helping those people have a healthy lifestyle. All I can say is I'm not going to vote for it unless somebody can explain to me why that number is what I consider to be inadequate. The people at the banks, I'll say one more thing, the people at the bank's healthcare surgery say that if this goes through, it will put demands on their service, which currently is pretty much stretched to the limit. And if they are also expected to meet the needs of the people in this care home, and they also meet the needs of 2 other care homes, incidentally, which I didn't know until I read the report, I just don't think that they'll be able to cope. And I think that is unfair, because I think they're doing a fantastic job. We heard that at a previous plans meeting when we agreed to them extending their surgery. I don't think that this number really begins to meet anywhere near the amount of money needed to meet the care facilities and the medical facilities of those future residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, we have one councillor who's indicating that he's not going to vote in respect to, because of his concerns about the healthcare contribution. If the committee as a whole were to decide to vote against a proposal or the officer's recommendation, then that would quite clearly be unreasonable. With the greatest respect to the councillor, you are not an expert in healthcare. The ICB have a process to calculate their charges or their requests, just like the county has in respect to its high-risk contributions and its schools contributions and everything else. The ICB are the experts, and ultimately, if they say that that is the figure that is required, as much as you might think that it's not a particular large figure, and to be fair, I agree with you, but that would not be a basis for this committee to even consider refusing it on those grounds. You have to take the advice from your experts. If Highways were saying they wanted something, you wouldn't ask. If Highways say they want to improve the road from a B road to an A road, you would be sitting here saying, no, that's not good enough, we want a motorway. You have to take the experts' advice.
Thank you, Mr Gill. I've got Councillor Smidovic next, then Councillor Seaton, and then we'll come to you, Councillor Infield. Councillor Smidovic.
Just two questions. Stop at page 210. It talks about the possible flooding. Will there be a sud in the land anywhere to capture drainage? And has the site access been looked at? It says the proposed access from Ratcliffe Road, the alternative access closer to Excelsior Road roundabout could potentially improve safety and reduce. Did you look at that?
Mr Akrab.
I mean, for the second one was about the access. The first point was about, sorry, SUDS. Okay. In terms of the access, it is what's in front of us, and it's been assessed by our statutory council team. They've assessed that through in terms of the various amounts of whatever the TA presented that would have included the road safety audit and other things. So the access itself is safe, and which would be conditioned accordingly. As far as SUDS, there's a number of conditions which the LLFA have recommended that includes sustainable drainage, the management, infiltration, and drainage during construction. So all of that would actually address any of the concerns as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr Akram. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. The S106 money is a one-off payment for the doctor's surgery, just to make some improvements, probably to extend a room. It's not necessarily to pay for those patients, because all those patients will come with a price attached to them anyway, whatever we cost. So if the doctor's surgery takes on 72 more people, they'll get the extra funding for those 72 people ongoing. The 106 money is just as an interim to extend, probably they've got a room, but they'll go to the ICP if they can't cope with it and borrow some extra money to build an extension if they can do that. So the 106 money isn't an ongoing maintenance for 72 people because that's the NHS provides that, or should provide that. I think it's an easy planning application to accept. I think the 106 that they are offering, well, they aren't offering. They've been told. They're all calculations, and they've been told what they've got to contribute to it. And one thing I have had to Google is a rain garden, which is something that they're going to do. And I advise you all to look on what a rain garden is, and you'll be very disappointed. It's a water butt, really. So I don't know whether this has been proposed. Was it proposed? I will second this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Infield.
Yes, I visited the site, and although technically it's outside the limits of development, the limits of development seem a little awry here when you look at the new development across the road that's going on. As to the ICB, as we've heard, we simply have to trust them. It would be nice in the future to have some indication of how they calculate these figures. But as we've heard from Councillor Seaton, there will be an NHS income related to these additional patients. And I saw somewhere in the report that it's been estimated that it would be something like 0.2 of a doctor to manage the demand. It might be a bit higher, but they will have the money to do that. So I'm absolutely fully behind this proposal. I think it's an excellent site. It's well shielded. It won't have a negative impact on the developments around it. It's well thought through, and you look at the statistics in the report, we absolutely need more of these care homes in Charnwood. So while we've got the ability to approve these things, I think we should.
Thank you very much, Councillor Infield. So Councillor O'Neill, you want to come back? I've got Councillor Fryer as well. So I might just let Councillor Fryer jump in, and then you can come back if that's all right, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much. I too visited the site this afternoon, and if I'd known where to go, I'd have put my name down. I'll tell that in advance. I've looked at page 200 and 201 to see what they are doing in the facilities. Modern, well-designed, with people who have experienced care homes for the 21st century, which we are now a quarter of the way through, are vital. I had some years ago, and I think all of us that have lived in communities know, people who, through no fault of their own, were widowed or widowered and needed no family, needed a home to live in. They didn't have ensuite bedrooms. They didn't have hair and beauty facilities. They were lucky if they just had a bed, which in the daytime became a sofa. I know that from experience because my aunt that lived to 102 had 10 years. There was just no other modern facilities. Now, purpose-built, good facilities, so I will be delighted. I appreciate people are worried about the S106 money, but we have to take the experts' advice. That's what they've asked for, is S106. The patients will be funded through the NHS, as my colleagues pointed out. So I'm happy to vote with. I would have seconded it, but someone else got him first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I take the point about the 72 people coming with a little pot of money with them to take with them to whichever GP surgery they are registered with. But I would also put, but that's one side of the story. I would also add that the GPs at the bank surgery give a slightly different interpretation of the situation. And I would also ask at this point for some guidance. Do I need to leave the room at this point, given that I've already decided, or do I get to vote, or can I ask our legal representative to give me some direction here?
The direction is quite simple. You expressed a view in the room, a negative view against the report. You're perfectly entitled to remain in here, and we have a motion which has been moved and seconded. And if you choose to vote against that motion for approval, then feel free.
My query is to do with how the number was achieved, and I've been told that I need to trust the professionals. Well, yeah, but on this particular occasion, I want, as somebody else mentioned, how was this number achieved? I find it very difficult to see how this is a reasonable number. This is on costs. We're talking about upfront funding.
So,
two different things, I think.
Councillor O'Neill, I think, so officers do have here the details of the calculation that the ICB used. I don't know if it's something that's practical to share.
Sorry, I can just jump in, Chair. The Section 106 contribution from the ICB is not about providing healthcare, as Councillor Seaton has said. What it's about is providing the facilities to enable the healthcare to be provided. So when somebody signs up at the doctor's, then the doctor's surgery will receive a figure, a sum from the health service with regard to that patient's care. And there are some patients that do need a lot of care and expend a lot of money. But then there's also lots of people that are registered at the doctors that never go to the doctors. And therefore, that money is still being given to the doctors, and they can use it for the benefit of all the patients in the surgery.
Very quickly, Councillor O'Neill, and then we'll come to you, Councillor Seaton, and then we'll go to the vote.
Say
We've
one more
discussed this
thing
for
and then I'll
quite a
shut
while.
up. I accept that, but what I would also draw your attention to is the comments of the surgery, of the GPs at Banks's surgery, who have a different point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Seaton, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to point out those 72 people before they went into a care home were provided for by the NHS, and they will still continue to be provided for in the same fashion. It might be that the doctor's surgery or might want to use a storeroom and decorate it so that they can use it for another room. But you've also got to understand, or not got to understand, but at Aspire and all of these have got health professionals there. They may not be the GPs or the local nurses, but that the person might have a urinary tract infection. They don't have to go to the doctors for that. It could be treated there. And so the smaller bits can be treated on site. So therefore it could save the going to the doctors, because I know for one, if I was on my own and I've got something wrong with my health, I'd be at the doctors straight away. But at Aspire, there's a nurse there, say probably not registered, I don't know, but there's a healthcare person there that would be able to guide them, help them, reassure them, and probably negate the reason for them having to go to the doctor in the first place. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Thank you,
So,
Councillor
thank
Seaton.
you.
So with that, I feel like we've discussed this in a fair amount of depth. So I think, unless you've got something burning to say, Councillor Hadji Nicolai, very quickly.
Spire is a private provider, it's a private business. They will make a lot of money out of the NHS because the NHS will be paying towards the Spire. There is a lot of discussion about this £28,000, etc. And as you mentioned quite rightly so, this is not going to go for the health care. It's not going to go to the NHS, which is going to, and the NHS is going to provide Spire because they're going to provide completely different amounts of money to Spire. What are these £28,000 for? What facilities? No, you just said that these £28,000 is a calculated amount of money for certain facilities. But what facilities?
The facilities will be what the ICB decide are required at the bank surgery and any other surgeries. And normally it's to do with the number of consultation rooms or equipment. That's what that money is for, to enable the surgery to provide the care. It's not about the cost of the ongoing care or health provision for the residents.
Okay, thank you all. We are now going to move on to the vote, you'll be pleased to hear. So we have a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Matthews and seconded by Councillor Seaton to accept officers' recommendations. All of those in favour? Any against? Two against.
So that's 11 for the motion, 2 against, Chair, so the motion is passed.
Lovely, thank you very much. So that brings us on to our next item, which is item 6, list of applications determined under delegated powers. Do we have some questions? Councillor Lenny.
Sorry. Oh dear.
Yeah, sorry, I know everybody wants to get away, but this is an application on the last but one page, on page 284. It's P/26/0494/2, and it's for a doggy daycare centre. And this particular application, I, on behalf of the parish council, said I was going to call in, but I've now found that it's already been passed by an officer. And I'm just wondering, I'm asking the question, how did that happen? Can somebody, maybe not now, can somebody explain to me how, when I call it in, I find an officer has approved it? The second point is then I've just noticed it says a temporary dwelling. Well, that was the original application, was for a temporary dwelling. And when that was knocked back by the plans department, it was changed to a permanent dwelling and it got passed. So this information here, is what I'm saying, is actually incorrect. Thank you.
Mr. Upton, do you want to come back to that, or is that the report respond to outside the meeting?
Yeah, if I can respond outside the meeting, but just can I just repeat the number? Sorry, Councillor O'Neill, I didn't quite get that. Yeah, I've got that, Chair. Yeah, I'll come back to you, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Councillor Lenny, you had something you wanted to ask?
Page 11 of the, oh, thank you. Page 11 of the delegated decisions. First one's the Schofield Centre at Green Close Lane, which is P/24/1368/2, where apparently a large building has had change of use from a community kitchen, nursery and somewhere else, church, and then changed into purpose-designed student accommodation for 28 flats, which I consider to be quite a large development, and it's just been kicked into delegated powers, and I wondered why. I don't need an answer today, but I'd like an answer. You know, how big does it have to be to be able to be considered by planning committee? And also, I can't find the page for this one, but it's 13 Milton Court, Lewis Road, Loughborough, Leicestershire, P/26/0775/2, which is a residential home for up to 3 young persons, and it's a proposed lawful development certificate. I don't know whether that's different to what the officer is delegated to do. Is that a different thing to an officer decision?
Mr. Upton?
Just taking those items in order, I will come back to you and confirm the detail on, well, first of all, Councillor O'Neill will come back to you on that one, and similarly the first one that you mentioned, Councillor Lenny, regarding delegation. But yes, Milton Court is, it's a judgment, it's not a judgment against planning policy, it's a judgment on a certificate of lawfulness. So that was deemed to be lawful.
Yeah, for the benefit of members, a certificate of lawfulness is a question of fact and law, and it doesn't call for any planning judgment. So effectively, you're looking at what the law says and what the facts of the use of the land is, or the proposed use is going to be. And most authorities, that is a delegated function down to officers, because you're not being asked to determine anything to do with planning merits. You know, it is what it is.
Can I go on?
If you're fairly quick.
Very. Yeah, this is for minors. So there's 3 young people, all minors, under 18, in a very small house. And I'd like to know, do all the rooms meet the minimum, bedrooms meet the minimum space standards? Is it regulated by Ofsted or Child Social Care? There's no parking there at all. It's just a little terraced house, and there's no resident carers. And could we, if anything horrible happened, could we be held responsible for not considering that these are minors living in a small house?
But those things you just said, Councillor Lenny, are planning matters in the main. As I've said, it's not a question of the planning merits. It's a matter of looking at the building, looking at the use and making a judgment about facts, not planning matters.
Right.
Okay, are we all happy? No one's got any more questions on delegated powers? Wonderful. In that case, we'll close the meeting and we will see you all at the next one, which is Thursday, the